Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday show. It is Sunday, December 14th. I am Promise Backlund. This is Matt Dillahunty. And we are hoping to talk to some theists today. The number is 720-619-2288 if you want to go ahead and try to get your call in now. We specifically want to hear from people that believe in a God and want to share why, and maybe let us know. I think the title of today's show is Are We Going to Hell? I would love for somebody to call and tell me that they think I'm going to hell and why they think that.
Yeah,
Matt, what kind of calls
I
are you
got
hoping for?
I'm interested in that in part because so evidently Kirk Cameron's son decided that he's an annihilationist now, and I think that Kirk Cameron might be teetering on that. Not that anybody cares or needs to care what Kirk or his son, perhaps even less his son, what they think about hell. I mean, these aren't. But the thing is, what Kirk thinks about it isn't any less significant than what the Pope thinks or anybody else, because nobody seems to be able to show that they are the messenger with the right message. And so if you're somebody who thinks, hey, yeah, you guys are going to hell and here's how I know, cool, call in and share that. Or if you think, oh, no, you're absolutely just going to be annihilated. Annihilation theory is this notion that those of us who are godless, reprobate sinners and who don't like gods or whatever, we just get annihilated when we die. So I'm not going to go to hell. I'm just going to cease to exist, which is what I think was going to happen anyway. And I'm wondering, is that just a way to pretend that your religion is even less falsifiable than it is? Or do
It's
you have good reason for it?
bizarre. I just saw that he was talking about that. My only knowledge of Kirk Cameron lately was when he made a video with Michael Knowles about a bunch of atheists, including myself. And Kirk in there talked about how he was going to be praying for my salvation and stuff. So interesting, because now maybe he's a little less worried about it because I'm just going to, go poof, I guess, which is like you said, what we already thought.
Somebody in
But
chat
yeah, if
was
somebody
like,
wants
who's Kirk Cameron? Good for you.
to. Nice. That's very good. You probably have a little less childhood trauma then because you didn't see Left Behind. Did you read those
Yeah, I
books? Were you into those when you were a Christian?
no. No and
Okay.
yes. We watched some of the films. And I was gifted all of the books, all of the end times books and everything else. But my mom gave them to me after she found out I was an atheist. And so I got this gift package that included all those books. And I think there were also books on cassette. But yeah, I was a little in, I don't have my books in here, that they're in the other room. I was more into kind of deeper biblical study than that. So it's like I was reading
Right.
Jack Van Impe's book, going through Revelation verse by verse, and in part because it's such a weird book. It almost didn't
Yeah.
even make the canon. There were people who found it distasteful, or people who thought that it wasn't inspired, and so it's that I find to be a real curiosity.
Hmm. When you were a Christian, what was so the way I grew up, we actually didn't believe in the whole end time stuff. We didn't think there was going to be rapture and all of that. Did you believe in the rapture?
Oh yeah, yeah, no,
Nice.
and it was soon, and very soon we are going to meet the
Yes,
King.
as always. Still waiting.
Yeah,
That's wild.
I was not. So like there was I remember one of the first big atheist events that we did out in Oakland was a Rapture Ram, a regional atheist meeting. And it was coordinated because Harold Camping, who was an apocalyptic minister out in the Oakland area, had once again announced a date that Jesus was coming back, and his followers were selling their belongings, selling their homes, and they were making a big deal out of it. I remember it was in May. I don't remember which year. There's pictures up there of me and Greta Christina and some other folks dressing up and then using a blow dryer to debaptize folks. And in the middle of that event, when Mr. Deity was up giving his talk, an earthquake hit. And it was the first and only earthquake I've ever been in. It was pretty mild. And so here you are in a room full of atheists on the weekend that the rapture is supposed to happen. And we're there mocking it to beat the band. And right in the middle of Mr. Deity's talk, boom, earthquake. And when it stopped rumbling, I kind of looked around and then I just yelled, "Is that all you got?" And we all laughed and went right back to mocking it.
That's incredible. Oh man. That stuff used to freak me out though when I first stopped believing, like the little things that would happen. Because, you're like, oh, this is the lightning strike that I've been told was
Yep.
going to happen. But then it just kept not happening. There would be turbulence on the plane. I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm going down. This is my punishment. And it never happened. What would be better than some kind of sign like that would be if somebody could call in front of hundreds, thousands of people, possibly even millions, depending on this video stream later, and share with us their evidence for the existence of their God, for the existence of hell, and why we should, believe that that's a thing. I would be interested in that. The number is 720-619-2288 if you want to get your call in. Matt, you've been doing this a gazillion years. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I'm saying we're so the show moved an hour earlier. We did that for a number of different reasons. Normally we would start at 2 Central. Now we're starting at 1 Central, and so it's going to take some time for some adjustments to be made for people to figure out. Oh no, I can call in even earlier, and so yeah, get your calls in, theists. By the way, theists always have priority, but they're not the only ones who necessarily need to call in. But we're doing this show, then we're doing the Sunday show after dark this evening at is it 6 p.m.?
I think
yes,
so.
The after dark goes an hour earlier as well, correct?
And in between that, there is sometimes, although perhaps not today, a vertical Cus I Wanna stream. Unfortunately, I mentioned I was down sick with the flu for almost the entire last week. I mean, this one is particularly rough, and it looks like Jimmy has got it because he messaged right before we went live to say that he's just insanely sick, and I'm so sorry. I didn't give it to him. We haven't actually been in the same building for a while, but it's bad and going around. So
That's
if
awful.
you, when you were raised, weren't into end time stuff, were you kind of like in a post-millennial sort of thing where, what did you think was going to happen? And how was it going to impact believers and non-believers?
Well, we were in the more dominionist group, which my family still is, this 7 Mountain Mandate teaching where we are called to bring heaven to earth. So there was kind of this understanding that we don't really know what's going to happen, but if we get in our positions of power, if we all get to the top of each mountain, so meaning like if we're in government, if we're in entertainment, if we're in education, and Christians take over those areas of society, then it's like you unlock the kingdom of heaven on earth. And so there was speculation about what that exactly means. And I still don't know. It was very unclear because it's the charismatic, like where you have the prophets constantly saying, well, God said this and God said that, and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. So it was more, I'm sure you would have thought of it as like heretical where we were, but it was just another brand of making claims and not having anything to back it up. So I wasn't so scared of the rapture, but I still heard about that stuff, even though our family didn't necessarily follow that. I was still afraid of stuff like that, and I was certainly afraid of hell. That was a big one that always stayed with me. I was terrified of hell, even as a Christian, because I had OCD, and so I was constantly afraid that I was going to backtalk to my mom and then Jesus was going to be disappointed in me and take away my salvation. Like I was going to be the one to be so bad that my salvation got revoked. So I was constantly like getting baptized and, saying the sinner's prayer and That was my fears revolved around hell for sure.
Wow, there's an incredible similarity here, despite growing up in two different denominations with different doctrines. I was not at all afraid of losing my salvation. Instead, the cycle that the Southern Baptist Church I grew up in was pushing was not so much that you could lose your salvation, but that perhaps you had never actually been saved to begin with.
Yeah, I heard that one.
And so you thought you were saved and you weren't. So my teen years were spent kind of rededicating my life, not redoing. I mean, in a way, yes, you would pray the sinner's prayer again. So it was very much the same sort of thing. But instead of thinking, oh, I might have lost my salvation, it's like, oh, I'd never had it in the first place. And in my case, it was especially difficult because I walked down the aisle at Gashland Baptist Church in Gladstone, Missouri, at the age of 5 during a revival and accepted Jesus into my heart. And supposedly, my parents then went to the minister and said, hey, can this even be real? I mean, can a 5-year-old understand this? And, how should we look at this? What should we think? And the minister basically told them, well, you have no way of knowing. But you've got to leave it up to God and leave it in God's hands. And then I was active in the church regularly all the way up, until I graduated high school. And I went to church more frequently than my folks did. But as a teenager, we were constantly doing mission groups and summer camp and all this. And a good chunk of it was, hey, have you had, sinful, lustful thoughts? Have you been keeping up with your walk with Christ? Have you been stumbling, blah, blah, blah? And if so, you have failed and you need to rededicate your life to Christ. And so that involved something akin to doing the sinner's prayer again. But it was really more about a repentance and God, I'm so terribly sorry for just being absolutely awful and failing to live up to your standards.
Yep.
And I will change and I will do better, but I'm going to need your help. And so I'm begging you now, Lord, and that was probably every few weeks during some periods of time, but at least every few months. And that's a strange place to live.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I feel like Christians are constantly telling me, well, I get to live with this certainty and this, assurance that I have. But I remember, and of course, some Christians probably are just walking around like everything's great. But as somebody who believed that stuff so, like it took over every single part of every single day for me. And so for me, it was so important that I wanted to get it all right. Even if that meant I have to remember I can't get it right, only Christ can. So now I have to apologize for thinking I can get it right. And now I have to rely on Christ, whatever that's supposed to mean. But there was a lot of, it just felt like I was never really assured. If anything, I was just super aware of, the spiritual warfare that was around me at all times that I, had to be mindful of. And it was not the perfect peace that passes all understanding that I was told I would have by any means. It looks like we're getting some calls in, so we'll let our screeners get to those. But if you are interested in calling and talking to us, the number's right there, 720-619-2288. Matt, in all your calls, do you have like a favorite, not specific call, that would be a lot to remember, but like what is the thing what makes you walk away from a call going, I actually enjoyed that one, to the point that you might remember it for a few days at least?
Oddly enough, it is not those occasions when somebody walks away and chat is like, oh, they're like one step away from becoming an atheist. Those are fine. I find that they don't necessarily turn out that way. If the call ends and we've had a discussion where the caller learned something the folks watching potentially learn something, or at least a better understanding of why somebody is or isn't convinced. And there's both sides are interested in possibly having the conversation again or continuing the conversation. Those are my favorites. I have no interest in the trolls and any of that. It is, I genuinely want to know, did I get something wrong? And if I haven't, then I feel like there's an obligation to try to help the people who seem to have gotten something wrong, at least be open to that, if not outright recognize it. So,
Love that. Funny enough, I like the ones that you talked about not necessarily being your favorite, where you walk away with somebody, like you start hearing them asking questions in a really honest way in the middle of the call, and you kind of hear them starting to question their own points. And I love that, because to me, I'm like, even if I just get you to go reconsider this one thing and it teaches you how to exercise that part of your brain that needs to question things, I think that's amazing. I also don't mind when it's a call that just goes so horrible, as in like they just absolutely cannot be honest and have nothing, to offer as far as on a one-on-one conversation, when they expose some major flaws in
right.
evangelical or Christian claims or whatever claims it might be, God claims in general. I love when where they go on full record, like this is, yes, this because of this, and then it falls apart so instantly and they lose it and they can't continue the conversation anymore because it doesn't hold any water. I think that's nice
Yeah,
for people to
I
hear.
don't like it when I don't like it when it feels like we're trying to dunk, but I have to admit, I absolutely love it when a caller is essentially acting as if and proclaiming to some extent, that we are just wholly irrational, beyond help, and then it's exposed that they don't even have a basic understanding. They don't understand how to tell what the burden of proof is, how to meet it. It is. I like
Yes.
those because I don't like liars. I don't like, it's essentially the false confidence and all that.
Yeah, no,
We
for sure.
have,
I love when the argument kind of just exposes itself and we don't have to do much other than let it unravel.
yep. Yesterday was LineCon online, and it was the free one, in part because so many people had donated.
Oh,
But
cool.
it was myself and Alyssa and Jovan. And Jovan
Nice.
basically gave a talk about Socratic method and asking questions, and how best to do that sort of interaction. And everybody's got a slightly different style, and Jovan is one of the ones who's more likely to give them more than enough rope to hang themselves and everybody who thinks like them. And
Yeah,
I genuinely find that fun.
I love that. It looks like we've got a call. We don't have Theists yet, which is wild because I know that they're watching and I know that they're already commenting on my stuff on Facebook. I would love to actually just have the conversation here because I'm not going to go back and forth with Theists in a comment section, but would love to actually talk here if you guys want to get your call in. In the meanwhile, we can
Pretending
chat.
that they were actually in church,
Right.
and so they don't want to call in too quick, or somebody will know they skipped church or left church early.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man. But in the meantime, we can chat with Mary. So let's bring her on. Hey, Mary, you are live on the line with Matt and Promise. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Matt and Promise?
I'm
well.
great.
I haven't talked to called in online in a long time, but anyway, Promise, I looked up your new book, Gospel Lies, on Amazon, and how it's in the religious section, which I guess that's where it belongs. I don't know if they have an atheist section, but anyway, I'm just wondering, is it autobiographical, where it's your story and the trauma and how you got over it and how women are treated? Is that the angle you went in your writing?
Not exactly. For those who don't know, thanks, Mary, for the excuse to share this. I'm very excited. I just announced pre-orders for my book, Gospel of Lies. And you'll see Matt Dillahunty's name on the cover as well, because he's writing the foreword. But yeah, so the book will be out in May. Pre-orders are available. It is not autobiographical in that it's more of a how-to. We're calling it kind of a guidebook. I do share some of my story throughout the book, but there's a chapter on hell and beliefs surrounding hell and how like different evangelical arguments for hell. There's a chapter on basically blood atonement, and there's a chapter on religious trauma, and there's a chapter on faith healers and prophets. And so each one covers different stuff, and in that I do share a bit of my background, but I wanted to spend more time addressing the actual arguments and helping people start thinking those through and how to respond, because I wanted to write the book that I wish that I had when I started questioning. I needed kind of like a cheat sheet of,
Okay.
okay, what are the arguments I need to be prepared for? Also, for somebody who maybe didn't grow up like me, what can they, why should they care about any of this? Why should this matter to them? So it goes into that quite a bit. So, you'll get some of that. But the way I look at it is I don't want to write the story of my life until I've lived a little bit more of it, at least. So, and since I'm only turning 35, I want to give it more time to sit down and write all about that, because I think there's, we all have our stories. Everybody here on the line has stories. I'm sure you have your own story. Our listeners have their own story. And so I don't know that people need another story from somebody else. While that can be really powerful, I instead wanted to help inspire them to start thinking for themselves and engaging with some of this extremist religious rhetoric and knowing what to say back. And more importantly, knowing how to think it through for themselves so that they can come up with their own arguments and feel confident.
Yes. So the title Gospel Lies is more you're covering just the BS that was poured into your brain from, I'm assuming, birth, early childhood.
Yes,
And,
indoctrination for sure.
Yeah, and that can be difficult to shake. I mean, my deconstruction was pretty easy. I was raised Southern Baptist, but after we only went to Sunday school and church on Sundays, and then after that, there wasn't much more said about God or hell or Jesus or anything. Just kind of went on with our lives. And then after I got married in the late 80s, I saw what was going on with Jim and Tammy Baker and all these horrific sex crimes that these preachers, the ones preaching against LGBTQ were the, closet gay people, so they're like, okay, you're protesting a little too much. But, and then I became kind of agnostic. I'm like, this is not, something's going on here, they're just getting super rich. And I was just agnostic for years, and we never went to church. And my mom would go, when we had our son, she goes, you need to take that baby to church. And I'm like, no, we're not. My husband was kind of atheist, but he never said it. And then it was just, then I read Greek and Roman mythology, and I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. And then now I consider myself first a secular humanist and a really hard atheist, especially after listening to R and Raw. You become really hard atheist if you listen to R and Raw a lot.
That'll happen for sure.
It's a metal atheist, I think, at that point.
Yeah, and listening to Matt too. I discovered Matt during like COVID, I think it was, or a little before, and I was like, man, and so it just, because we didn't read all the horror stories in there, Jephthah and Lot, and I didn't know about all those.
Yeah.
with
Yeah, they
happy
don't tell you
Jesus.
quite
They
everything.
don't tell you. There's actually a part in my book where I just share just a few of the stories in the Bible when I went through and reread the Bible when I was questioning everything, where I was like, wait a second, I've read this so many times, but how did I not pay attention to this one and this one and this one? There's some really weird, crazy stuff that there's a reason they don't preach those at the Sunday school,
Yeah. We just, I'd never heard all these stories before till I pretty much became an atheist and started listening to, YouTube people like Matt, especially, and Seth Andrews and, all those people. And now I have my schedule on Sunday, or every night of the week, really. And
Aw.
so, but do you feel, if you don't mind me asking, um, do you feel you're totally over the trauma, or are there times when it bubbles up? And I know you're happily married, and your husband is. I saw your wedding dress, beautiful.
Oh,
But
thank you.
do sometimes things bubble up, or are you kind of just totally like it? It was easy for me. I just like, okay, I'm not
Sure.
buying this.
Yeah. I think the thing about trauma is that it's not, for me, sure, there are some things that can trigger something where I'm like, oh God, that's something left over from my past for sure. That happens less and less often now. I spent a lot of money on therapy to to get the
Mm,
tools to emotionally deal with that. But I think with trauma like that and with indoctrination to that degree, where it literally changed my brain, it is something I will live with the rest of my life, which is why I do this work, because I don't believe that anybody should have to live with this. Um,
right.
I have OCD, which thankfully is at a manageable place, but I have all kinds of things that make life a little bit more difficult. The difference is I have been able to access things that I need in order to be my best self. And so I don't feel held back. I don't feel like this is ruined my life. I feel like I'm in a really good place and a healthy place. And I love my life now and I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm so grateful that this is where I've ended up. But I think trauma is something you learn to live with. It's something you learn to respond to when it comes up. And so I've gotten better at responding to it. We can put it that way. But of course, there's still stuff that comes up. I don't think it's not like this wound that heals and goes away. There will forever be some little things here and there. And that's why
Yeah, it was a
I'm,
part of your life. Yeah.
right. Yes. And it's still part of my life. My family is still in it. My entire country is steeped in the extremism that I was indoctrinated with, and the government and everything. And I just see it taint everything all the time. So I'm constantly confronted with it, which is part of what's helped me be like, yeah, I need to be really good at responding to this. But yeah, it's more
Yeah.
like something you learn to live with. It's like I think my brain works differently than it would have if I wasn't indoctrinated to that degree, and I know how to deal with it now. And that's the good side. But nobody should have to deal with that. No child should have to experience the fears and the thoughts that I had growing up, and what they did to me over time. Which is why I will continue doing this as long as I can. Which is why I wrote the book. Um, it's why I think everyone here on the line is doing really important stuff. Even when it sounds like some silly calls and these clippable things, you never know what's going to be the thing that helps unlock a new level of free thought for somebody when they hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, and our son, I mean, we don't even have a Bible in the house, but I know my mom, when he got older, and he would go over there if we're going to go out to eat or go out or something. And I found out she'd like given him this book, the New Testament for teenagers, and he didn't really pay any attention, you know, but she
That's
never
good.
snuck him off to church or anything. But,
Yeah.
she goes, and then in my late 40s, I started studying Buddhism, and I was really into it. I liked it, but then I've kind of found out they have their supernatural things too. But I like just the ideology of it, of compassion and that sort of thing. And so I would go to my
Yeah.
Buddhist groups, and my mom just, I thought she's going to have a stroke when I'd stop by there after my Buddhist group on Sundays, and she goes, "Where have you been?" I said, "I was at my Buddhist study group." She's, "Oh, oh, you know."
Oh, I'm
And then
sure.
I got a yin and yang tattoo on my ankle, and she goes, What's next? A Buddha on your butt?" And I was like, "Okay, mom," But
Why not?
she finally calmed it. Not a not at
Uh,
my age right now, no. Uh, but she finally kind of got over it, and she said, If you have found something that brings you peace, that's fine." So, but anyway, well, I can't
well,
wait
that's
to
good.
read your book. I won't take
Thank
up
you
any
so
more
much,
time because
Mary.
hopefully some theists will call
It
in,
looks like
and
we've got some waiting now, so but
all
I
right.
so
Well, thank you for
appreciate that.
talking to me,
Of course, thank you.
and
It means so much to hear from you guys that you're excited about this. I still doesn't feel real to me, so to have somebody even know the title of it, I'm like, it's real. It's out there. So, thank you for all the
oh yeah,
support.
I saw you on Facebook. All right, bye,
Oh,
Matt
thanks,
and Thomas.
Mary.
Y'all have a good
Bye.
day.
Thank you. You
Bye,
too.
bye. Thank you.
We've got a couple of callers in. Do you see one, Matt, that you want to start with?
Oh, I'm always going to go with the theist.
Let's do it. Let's talk to Ethan. I'll bring Ethan on here. Hello, Ethan. You are live on the Sunday show with Matt and Promise.
Hi, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys. The question was, is it always a good thing, or not always, but is it justifiable to stay in a religion even if you don't agree with it, just out of the fear or the consequences that would come with leaving?
I guess I'd have to know exactly what you mean by stay in it. And Matt and I might have different perspectives on this. I think if your personal safety is at risk and you have to pretend to be still involved in something, then I would prioritize personal safety. I would also be working on figuring out a way to move on. But maybe you mean like intellectual fear, like if you're scared of hell or something. What is your exact, like, do you have like an exact situation or example?
Probably the big thing would be family, losing family. It's a pretty fundamental religion. And so, I mean, I'm kind of agnostic. Well, not I would consider myself still Christian, but I definitely, like, my values don't align with theirs. I don't know if that answered your question, but it would be more,
Yeah.
I guess, the consequences of family.
I understand. I can just share from what I did because I wasn't sure what the consequences would be. I didn't know if my family would, disown me or what would happen. I knew that I was no longer going to have the career that I had working in ministry. I knew that I was going to be starting my life over again anyways. I could not stay in it anymore because it was so dishonest to participate in something that I found to be extremely harmful, not just, full of lies, but I also found it to be really harmful. And I was watching it harm people around me. I, see, like I was talking about on the call earlier, like how it harms children and all of that. And so I could not stay. And so I decided, yes, I love my family so much. They mean so much to me. But I also have to, keep my own integrity and be honest with myself. And for me, that looks like being honest with others. And so I told them, I said, I need you guys to know that I don't believe any of this anymore. And I would love for us to be able to maintain connection, but there's going to have to be some boundaries if we do. And if not, I understand. But this is, at this point, in a metaphorical way, life or death. Like I can stay in this and just not be my full self and be living a lie every day, or I can move forward and you guys can accept that and we can figure it out from there. So that's what I did. I could not stay, but I think this is such a personal thing. If you're talking about like, is it reasonable? Does it make sense? Matt's going to have a better answer for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank
for
you.
Me,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
So you're saying that you still consider yourself a Christian, although you did almost say agnostic. So I'm assuming that there's some doubt and deconstruction or of some sort going on. There's a difference between staying associated with a particular church or a particular religion and actually believing it and accepting it. It sounds to me like you are rejecting the teachings of the church that you're a part of, but you are still a believer generally, and you're concerned about being ostracized from your family. So you're like, hey, is it all right for me to keep going along with these things that I may even find repugnant and immoral? And I agree with Promise that it's going to come down to a personal decision. I hid my disbelief for a number of years while I was trying to figure out the best way to let my folks know, to let my family know. I was actually working on a book specifically to explain to them how and why I got from A to B. And then somebody outed me, and I had to make a decision, and I decided really quickly, I'm me. I'm comfortable with who I am. I need people to love me and care about me for who I actually am and not who they think I am or who I'm pretending to be. That was really important. And if I had been, for example, still a Christian but not a fundamentalist, I think that would have been a lot easier to just say, hey, don't worry, I still believe in this and this, but I don't think the church's teachings are there. And it's really easy to be like, hey, why don't you guys pray for me? If you think God answers prayer and I've gotten some bit of doctrine wrong, why don't you pray for me because I'm struggling? And then it takes the responsibility off their shoulders. They've done what they need to do. And most everybody I grew up with understand believers disagreeing on points of doctrine. You can't have hundreds of denominations and not realize that. You can't have everybody experiencing their own doubts and not realize that. And especially if you're in an anti-queer church and all of a sudden or are queer, or people who are queer and people in your family know that, all of a sudden that fundamentally changes your perspective on the religion. And I think that's an important thing. And not just, it tells us that we prioritize people over the pedantry of a priesthood, essentially. And so nobody can decide what's right for you other than you. But I will say, if you believe still, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I'm struggling with aspects of this. And you might find that they have similar doubts, or maybe some of them have even gone further. After I came out as an atheist, there were a couple of members of my extended family who let me know right off the bat, yeah, I'm never going to say anything, but I agree with you. And that helps.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot. You said something pedantry. I'm not sure what you meant by that. The pedantry of the priesthood?
No, yeah. So pedantry or being pedantic is focusing on the nitpicky details, I suppose. And so most theists and most Christians that I'm aware of don't really get into the minutia on doctrine. And it's more of a community and feels, I think.
Yeah. So, okay. Mine, just for my personal experience, what I'm going through, mine does it, and it's anti-queer. I'm not queer, or I'm not LGBT, but I have a hard time hearing stuff that they say. Even today, they said,
Sure.
just, I mean, I don't need to get into specifics, just stuff that I just don't agree with. And I never have. I've always, I mean, I think we talked or mentioned what I believe. I don't even want to say that I'm Christian because that has so much baggage. I mean, I think that the Old Testament is mythology. And I don't even know, much more than that. I think it can't be proved. And
yet what about, sorry, I have to do this, Ethan. What about the New Testament? Because I don't know how you get a New Testament if you disregard the Old Testament.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it like a whole lot. I mean, I just always grew up with, I guess my saving grace was, okay, well, I agree with a lot of the stuff that Jesus says. So if I can agree with that, then I can kind of just slide on the rest, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of, various deals and bargains we've made. My friend, Jerry DeWitt was the first kind of, we jokingly say graduate of the Clergy Project. The Clergy Project was put together for active and former ministers who no longer believe. And it's an anonymous community where they can get together, they can talk to each other about the struggles that they're having. Because if you're a minister and you don't believe, your entire life and livelihood is at risk. And there are people stuck in the pulpit because they don't have other career paths or opportunities. And so Jerry wrote a book called Hope After Faith. And early on, he described this sort of process of kind of like the multiple stages of grief, but where, first you're more fundamentalist, and then you get to a point where, well, God loves everybody, and then it's God saves everybody, and then it's, you basically invent the theology that you're comfortable with. And I find that I find that interesting as well, because if there's a God that is supposedly convicting you of your sins and the things that you get wrong, it doesn't make sense that people would feel better, more compassionate, more honorable outside of their religion or in conflict with that religion, and then not have a God clear it up in any way. And we end up with 1,000 denominations that all call themselves Christian and believe different things about virtually everything.
Yeah. No, and you actually just said something that I was curious to ask you, and promised I would like your thoughts on it also. Is it okay if I just kind of switch the subject really quick?
Yeah, go for it.
I've heard you say a couple times, and you said today, I think, like their specific interpretation of Christianity or their interpretation of the Bible. Do you think that there is like an actual true interpretation of the Bible?
No.
There would have to be so many, because there's not one author, and there's not, things were taken out and added back, and, kings have been involved, and politicians have been involved, and agendas on behalf of all kinds of people. And so I think even the original, like, it would be so difficult to figure out even what the original authors, because there's not original authors, because there's not, we don't even have like a one canon of everything, because it's been changed so many times. So I don't think there is a real version of Christianity. So when Christians are telling me I'm a real Christian, that person isn't, I think it's silly, because there's, that there's no such thing, in my opinion. Matt may think something
when you have
different.
66 books written by a bunch of different authors, many of whom you have no idea who they are, and you have, for example, the church misrepresenting and even, in some cases flatly lying about the origin of various scriptures, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John weren't written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John that the church ascribes to them. And we don't have any way of finding out what the author's original intent was. And so the only way there could be a true version of Christianity is if, in fact, there is a God that the scripture is supposed to be representing. And if there's a God that the scripture is supposed to be representing, Where is it? And why is it letting people fight and die and struggle and argue and feel alone and not sure at all about which version is correct? If there is a God, it is incumbent on that being to very clearly say, no, this is the right version. Otherwise, how could it possibly punish someone for believing the wrong thing? I mean, we're in a world with broken and limited faculties, but we at least understand that. And depending on which version of Christianity you got, it may be that there's this supernatural, incredibly powerful evil entity that is seeking to deceive us. And seemingly God's not doing anything about it now, but someday he'll fix it. It is all the same sort of post hoc justification for, you might as well be saying that there's a note on the refrigerator from mom, and none of us have ever seen mom. None of us have ever met mom. Mom never identifies herself, but she really wants you to clean your room. And if you don't do it, there's a torture chamber in the basement that she's built specifically for you. And there's no way to verify any of that. And that's kind of frustrating.
No, I 100% agree. And that was, it does kind of tie into what I originally asked, because that was, aside from not aligning with my values, that was one of the things that, I mean, humans can't even agree on what the Constitution is really saying, or the intention of the Constitution. And so it was like, okay, if I really discover the true meaning of the Bible, what am I going to do? Start a new religion? I mean, so anyway.
That's what people do. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I really appreciate so much, Ethan, that you're thinking about all of this and these questions. And I'm sorry that you're having to. I'm sorry that you're having to, basically consider like keeping peace with family or being true to yourself. Nobody should be put in that position, which is another, negative point for religion, for putting families in these situations.
No, I agree. Okay.
Is there anything else you have for us before we?
You mentioned the book. What was the Matt? You mentioned the book. What was the name of that?
Sorry, which book?
It was a book. You said someone wrote it. It was on deconstructing, and maybe I'll just listen to it again, and I'll figure it out.
Oh, I think he's talking about when you were talking about what's his name from the Clergy Project, what he had written up.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Jerry DeWitt, and it's called Hope After Faith.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks so much, Ethan.
It's a good look at a former clergy person. And there's quite a few others. I have a number of friends that are former clergy and are part of the Clergy Project. So.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, because I'm not clergy, but I mean, I'm along with, family and community. It's also like standing in the church. Yeah, anyway, but that's another subject. So.
No, the reason I find it so useful for non-clergy people is that I grew up thinking that the pastor or the minister was the one closest to God and almost certainly to be right. This is who you went to when you were having spiritual struggles. And when you read a book like Jerry's or some of the writings from other Clergy Project members, what you find is none of them know or understand anything any better than anybody else does. They just have their feels. And there's this sort of reinforcement thing going on. They act as a counselor, even though they don't necessarily have any training at all in being a counselor. And when things turn out good, that reinforces that they did the right thing, whether they did or not. And when they make the parishioners feel good, that gives both of them a sort of dopamine hit that reinforces the entire scheme until the next time something goes wrong. But highly recommended that and a few others as well. I think I put up a reading list, but you can find some from clergy people.
Okay. All right. Thank you again, guys. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. Have a great evening.
All right. Take care.
Or afternoon.
You too.
Bye. I keep forgetting that I'm on a very different time zone than most people. It's 10 p.m. my time, so the day is done. You guys are just getting started. That was nice. I really appreciated that call.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see this gets back into the type of calls that I like to have. I think it would be great to hear from Ethan again after he does some more thinking and reading. Maybe he's going to come up with better questions. Maybe he's going to be like, oh, no. I figured it out. I went and read the books you guys talked about. I saw this and I figured out the mistake you've made. And here's why, even though
Sure.
maybe this fundamentalist version of Christianity isn't true, there's, good reason to believe in these other things. And so I'm optimistic that we'll hear from Ethan again. I have no idea if he's any closer at all to being a godless heathen or not. But I hope he's a little closer to being happy and finding a way to be comfortable with beliefs that are causing conflicts with loved ones that are going to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure. We've got another caller. We're still waiting on our theists to call in. We started the show an hour earlier, which is a new thing, and so I'm sure that's part of it. They're just stuck in church, maybe. But the number is 720-619-2288 for any theists that want to call and tell us what God you believe in, why you believe in that God. If you think, Matt and I are going to hell, I would love to hear that. If I'm going to hell, I should know about how you reached that conclusion.
Yeah,
in the
do
meantime,
I need to pack a bag or?
Right. Yeah. Is it going to be fun? So far, I keep hearing all the coolest people ever are going to be there. So,
I mean, if I have the choice between going to hell and hanging out with some of the people I'm told are going there, or going to heaven and sitting around praising all day, I think I'm going to take hell. But I don't think either of them are real.
That was one of my things when I was a kid. I remember going into my parents' room at night crying because I was telling them, I can't understand forever. Like, what do you mean forever? We're going to be in heaven worshiping God. Like, I couldn't wrap my mind around, of course, I was 5 years old, around the concept of eternity. And I was just thinking, like, I can't get through a 30-minute worship service without a coloring book. So how am I going to get through an eternity of that? It was stressing me out. I was crying. I was like, I'm going to be the worst person in heaven ever. I'm going to need a coloring book, and just not the vibe.
Over the years of,
all right,
of helping, over the years of interacting with people who are deconstructing, there's a lot of different paths and processes that lead to people's deconstruction. And I've been fortunate to talk to so many people that it's clued me into where I was atypical or weird or whatever else. In part because I was raised in a primarily Southern Baptist church and walked down the aisle at 5. So I don't have memories prior to that. And I know of people who, as children, who were saved as children and active in religious, devout families, who would go to bed at night crying because they knew their best friend was going to go to hell. I never had that experience. I think it's because I was basically taught they are currently destined for hell. But what we're doing here on behalf of God is that, that might actually save them. And so instead of focusing on the fact that they were currently going to hell, we were instead focused on they can still be saved. And so there was a positive thing. Did you feel a mix of that, or was it more, I need to do this positive work? Or were you one of the ones that was like, oh, I'm going to cry for all these people who are doomed?
When I was really young, I remember being worried that some of my cousins, because they watched a movie I didn't think we were allowed to watch, like that they weren't really saved. And, I remember crying about that. When I was a teenager, I think I landed somewhere more similar to you, in that I so believed that God was this amazing, good God, and there's no way he could possibly somebody that I care about was not going to go to hell. However, I also didn't know anybody that wasn't Christian. I was so indoctrinated. I was,
Right.
in Christian homeschool, like everybody around me was a Christian. It wasn't until my early 20s that I actually started being around people, working for people that were, Buddhist or atheist or just not a Christian, that I had to really confront that idea. And where I landed then was that I was just like, I'm just so sad for them, because imagine, their life seems good now, but imagine how much better it would be if they believed this truth that I have access to, that I should be able to share with them. But I realized I didn't have very convincing talking points for them. I was like, well, how do I even have this conversation? So it was in my pursuit of trying to know God and know the Bible inside and out and be able to share this truth with other people in the most convincing way possible that everything started falling apart for me. So that was actually a big, thinking all that through was a big part of my process. We've got
if you're
a couple
ready
of
for more,
callers. Yeah, no theists still, which I know you guys are listening. Please, somebody just be brave and call and let's have a chat. Let's hear if you genuinely think we're going to hell and you're not calling to tell us what we can do to avoid that. I don't know how you're okay with yourself. As a Christian, I wouldn't have been. I would have been like, if I had heard something like this, I would have been like, oh my God, I need to figure this out and help these people. So I don't know. Maybe somebody believes enough to actually want to defend the belief. Meanwhile, my lights are dying, so now it's getting dark over here. Shall we talk to Alexandria in Belgium?
Absolutely.
Hello, Alexandria. You are live on the Sunday show with Matt and Promise.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Promise. This is really cool. I have called in before, but I haven't talked to either of you. So, yeah, hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hi. Maybe I should just start with like a little aside thing for Promise. I really relate to the OCD stuff. I also think a lot about hell still, even though my upbringing wasn't even that religious. And so one of the themes I think a lot about is harm. And that was also reflected in the DM I sent you. If it's so, I just want to say sorry about those parts. I understand that they may come off as parasocial. I thought of not sending them, but then I was convinced that something bad would happen to you in Brussels if I didn't send them. So, like, I had to because
I don't think I didn't even see messages so that I know of. My DMs are so flooded that I don't, but I appreciate your concern and I understand all that goes into that. What was your question for us today?
Yeah. Cool. So how do we teach about the horrors of religion without getting into trouble with regards to damaging intercultural relationships? In Belgium, we have, as part of the education curriculum, a worldview class. And so you can have Catholic Christianity, Protestant Christianity, Islam, and one of them is humanism. So that's where the atheists and agnostics tend to go. But there is, as part of the pedagogical project of education, there is an emphasis that the teachers of worldview classes need to emphasize cross-religion connection between like practitioners of different faiths. And so I am concerned about that because while on the face of it, that is a good thing because connection is good, it also leads to situations where I am concerned about it's forcing teachers to sterilize the bad. Because if we want to be honest, God in whichever religion would be tried in The Hague. Like there's no way we can just justify their stuff, like genocide, rape, all of that. Pedophilia in the church and in, I forget the name, but there was recently a country that made it illegal to marry children. And it was overturned within 24 hours, apparently, because the elders were angry because it's the word of Allah, I think it was, that should prioritize the earthly laws. And so, how do you approach that without sounding like you're inciting hatred? Because Belgium is also a country where the immigration policies are very controversial. There's a lot of racism and like ethno-states promoting stuff. And so we don't want to add fuel to separation. We don't want to add to the ideas of children being bullied because they follow a different religion. That is a religion that people with darker skin tend to follow more than the white person. How do we go about that? Because I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. When I was there in Belgium a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with somebody there about this in Brussels and the issues that are coming up right now. And my answer is I don't have solutions for institutions. I know for myself, I'm doing what I can, which is by sharing my story and talking about these things. Hopefully we're getting the book translated into many languages so that I can also get it out over here in Europe as well, because I do think that this is something that needs to be talked about. I think that if, just my personal opinion, if schools are going to talk about religion, then they either need to just share, okay, this is what this group believes, this is what this group, which I think would be silly because as we know, there's like 44,000 denominations just of Christianity. So which parts are you going to share, and like you said, then you miss out on some of the like worst parts. Or they need to share what I think is more interesting and relevant is the history of how these different religions have impacted people, what, the issues that we face today. I don't know. I don't have I don't know if there's a particular country that's just absolutely crushing it in that area and they're doing a great job and we should model after that. There probably is. I don't know which one it is. But in general, my answer is that I'm doing what I can. I'm talking about this. I'm sharing, my personal experience. I'm also, we talk to people with all kinds of beliefs here, whether they're Muslim or Christian or Hindu. And that's what I can do. That's my contribution. In conversations, when it comes to like one-on-one, when I'm talking to people, I continue to push that it is about the beliefs and it is about the harm that brings to humans and trying to prioritize the connecting points of, caring about the well-being of others. Because oftentimes I can connect with somebody over that and we can talk about that and we can address, okay, so what are we going to do then about this rampant pedophile problem that this religious organization has a problem with? What do we do? If we are all agreeing that we don't want kids to be harmed, then we got to talk about this. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about this. So I don't know. That's not a clear answer for you at all, but I'm just doing what I can. I think we each have to do what we can. I think secular humanism is something that should be talked about more. I think that's probably a solution as well. I love that. Did you say that they're talking about that in the curriculum as well and presenting that as something?
Yes, but only in, I think, 1 out of 3 schools, because a lot of the schools are Catholic schools. And I really don't understand how religion just gets a pass, because if I made up some bullshit and then went, it's actually a religion, now you cannot criticize me because you're infringing upon my religious rights, and you need to allow my school to be accredited and recognized. And
right.
I don't know why we give religion a pass.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And the conversations I'm hearing over here, sometimes in Finland and in the different countries I've been in Europe, now there's this fear with immigration and everything that Islam is, something that we should be looking at as a concern, which obviously I can agree with Islam being I think it's just as false as Christianity and just as harmful. But then a lot of people are saying, therefore, now we should bolster Christianity and we should make sure that Christianity protects everybody from Islam. And that's I think that's kind of what you're talking about, us needing to avoid as well, is we have to talk about people at the end of the day and separate that from beliefs. That's my solution, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't have, like I said, solutions for institutions. Maybe Matt has better things to add here and a more clear answer.
No, and my answer is going to irritate. I don't give a fuck. I have zero interest in soft peddling the truth or objections to lies based on somebody's sincerely held beliefs or their religious culture or anything else. I engage in conversations with the people who want to engage in those conversations. It's a call-in show. I don't call out. And I'm going to object to actual harms done, including privilege and favoritism towards a particular religion. So I probably wouldn't do well in some of these countries where they've decided not to value free speech over please don't offend me. I don't care. If it offends, that's your problem. And if merely having a discussion about hey, here's my set of beliefs. Are they reasonable? Should we be teaching them? Is this, something we should be encouraging? If an honest discussion on that offends people, not my problem.
Sure.
And
yeah,
I
agree with that.
I think some of the issue too, like being worried about this, like being disrespectful towards people's religions, now giving racists an opportunity to justify their bigotry. Unfortunately, I think the people that are bigoted and racist are going to continue being that way, and this isn't going to be what's going to sway them one way or the other. They're doing that, and they'll get that excuse through whatever other religion, So I get the concern, and then I also get that they're going to be doing that.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned is this notion of, hey, we don't want to create an environment where somebody is being bullied for being the wrong religion. Okay, bullying is its own issue and can be addressed and should be addressed. Being opposed to all the religions and treating religions as a positive representation is not the same thing as saying we're okay with bullying. And so you can solve more than one problem. But I think that if you say, hey, bullying is such an issue and people are so incapable of actually ending their bullying that we're just not going to allow you to talk about this because other people are awful, my response would not remotely be diplomatic, which is, okay, arrest me. You are never, ever, ever going to get me to stop talking about this. And you're not going to convince me that because person A wants to be an asshole to other people, that this should prohibit me from pointing out that both of them have problems. But I'm...
Yeah.
Anyway, that was all of my thought on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's just once again I agree, but the problem is just that it's not like I think you can get away with a lot more harsh criticism at the level of a university and just outside of the education institutions, but it makes it difficult. I said I identify as like an anti-theist in the call screen thing, because I think I think religion is the longest running, most disastrous misinformation campaign that humans have ever brought onto themselves. But that is a position that is not conducive to getting employed in education. And then you have an issue where this view gets kind of, it's more difficult then to reach children and young students, because, well, you are institutionally barred because you need to agree to a certain degree of softness in the approach to be allowed to work in the school. And I don't know what to do with that, especially because when it comes to children, so ages 6 to 12, they also have the right to freedom of religion. But I really struggle with it, because you cannot really talk about rape and murder and genocide and drowning puppies and kittens and pregnant people in a global flood to a 6-year-old, because then that would not be developmentally appropriate. But the entry stories of, oh, God loves you and he made every one of us, those stories are in schools. And so I don't know how to deal with that, because the indoctrination starts.
Schools shouldn't be making claims to children that they can't back, which is what's happening there. And that's why Matt and I do what we do. And I'm hoping to connect with more people over here in Finland, in other countries in Europe, and continue this work, because I think you're right, there are very specific issues that come up in different places over here, because it's very different than the US. Very, very different. It is in some ways a lot better because it's way less polarized, but then there's these subtleties and the things you're talking about that are bigger issues. So yeah, I think my best thing to say would just continue your stance and find organizations that you can to link up with and connect with, and humanist organizations where you are, that can work on maintaining free thought.
Cool, thanks. I have 2 more questions, if the time is okay. One is really, really short.
Sure.
Matt, I think, mentioned something, a website. I don't know if it was in a recent actual live stream, or if it just happened to be a clip that I just recently saw. But it was a website that had all the claims of the Bible and the scientific refutation of those claims, I think. And I have been looking for it, but I couldn't find it. And I talk to Jehovah's Witnesses, because those are the only religion that literally come to my door, and I can invite in to just argue with them, which is very fun. But they, my friend was here as well, and I mentioned the websites, but we couldn't find it, and we would like to know the one you were talking about.
Well, I'm not sure I know which one. But are you able to see chat right now?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I just posted the link to talkorigins.org in chat, and that is the index to creationist claims. It doesn't go through everything in the Bible, but that is an index to creationist claims. And then there are other resources that offer rebuttals to, I don't know, other things as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I see some people in the chat throwing out some ideas as well too. So I would just check in chat for sure.
Yeah,
Skeptics
cool.
Annotated
Thanks.
Bible, talkorigins.org, all of those. Earlychristianwritings.com.
Okay. I want to be respectful of the time, but specifically, I think this may be in the ballpark of Matt. I watched an older video from the Atheist experience, and there was a woman that had tried like 50 different religions or something, and you asked her, in all that time, you didn't think to study epistemology, which made me think, well, have I done that? And I hadn't. So I've been reading up on epistemology, but how do you deal with epistemological bedrock when you are arguing? Because I don't know how to solve hard solipsism. I don't know how to solve
Nobody does. That's the point.
Grice problems. Yeah.
Nobody knows how to solve the problem of hard solipsism. That's the point.
Mm-hmm. But how do you deal with that then when
you point out that there's no solution to the problem?
Witnesses?
You point out that there's no solution to the problem, and them claiming that they have a solution that they can't demonstrate as a solution, or that even the problem exists. I mean, when you're talking about grounding,
okay.
But also the other resources. The other resources, infidels.org has a reading list with rebuttals to all kinds of stuff.
Cool. Thank you very much. I just bring up the epistemology issue because I keep arguing, and then the Jehovah's Witness keeps asking, why do you know this? Why do you know this? Why do you know this? And then at some point I have to like refer to, that's what I was taught. And then I keep going and going, but then at some point I reach bedrock, and then they go, well, now it's just a preference, isn't it? And like, what the fuck do I do with that?
No, it's not just a preference. No, it's not just a preference. I'm going to define truth as those things which are consistent with reality. And while we cannot show that our senses are completely reliable, and we cannot show that reason is reliable, under the assumption that our senses are basically reliable and that reason is reliable, there's an interconnected web of truth that demonstrates what reality is to the best of our ability. The only thing that they can do is say, well, you can't be absolutely certain. And the answer is correct. And neither can you about anything. Well, without absolute certainty, it's all just chaos. No, that's not true. It's not true that it's either absolute certainty or absolute chaos. There are degrees of confidence and degrees of warrant. And it is more warranted to believe that the Earth spins on its axis and orbits the sun than it is to believe that on Mars there's a winged pink unicorn that farts ice cream.
Yeah, okay. That's a good one. If they then, what if they challenge, is there a point in arguing with them if they then just go, well, I don't accept the first axioms of reason is reasonable, or like, okay, we can trust some of our senses. Like, what do you do then?
If you're just going to say, I don't care about reason, okay, well, until you do care about reason, we can't have a discussion, because I determine reality and have conversations based on reason, because even if it's imperfect, it is demonstrably the best tool. And it is always a better tool than nuh-uh, and always a better tool than, here, let me just pull this out of my butt. If they're going to be like, I don't accept that reason is reasonable, then go the fuck away. You've wasted enough of my time. I think you're a liar, is what I would say, because every fucking one of them believes that reason is reasonable. The difference is they think that they have found that reason is reasonable because there's a God, and they think that you have no reason to think reason is reasonable. And at the end of the day, when they say they're not going to accept that reason is reasonable, they're liars, because they were willing to use reason throughout the entire conversation right up to then. If somebody really believed that reason wasn't reasonable and you had a conversation with them, what would happen? they might as well just look at you like you have 3 heads and you're just spewing nothing but gobbledygook. Because if they don't accept reason, why are they even trying to engage with you in a reasonable fashion? They are liars.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's I think enough time that I spent on the show today. I just want to mention the audience cannot rewind the live stream right now. They can only stop the recording and then play it from where it's then live again. So
yeah, we've had some tech problems with this show. So thank you. Unfortunately, you guys are stuck watching us in real time.
Well, is it still going to be posted?
Yes, we'll make sure it should all be up and available and everything. I'm sure Arden's working on that. I think when we started it over, we had to start over on a new link and all of that, so it changed everything. But yeah, the show everything else should be back to normal after this.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys so much for your work and including the screen callers and call screeners. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And the producer and people.
Thanks so much, Alexandria.
Bye, folks.
Bye.
Oh, and we lost the only other call.
Oh. Where are the theists? What is going on? Are they just...
They're scared. I mean, I'd be willing to make a deal. Like, they're all afraid of you. And so since you're all afraid of promise, if you want, even though I like the fact that promise is running everything, if you desperately are afraid to talk to promise, either because your religion forbids you from engaging in conversation with a woman, or because you know that she would clean your clock with regard to arguments for the existence of God, I will get promise to agree to mute for a call. Similarly, if you'd rather just talk to promise, I will absolutely mute as well. I don't know why these sorts of things are needed, but the reality is, and Brady and I were talking about this last week, apologists are done. They've given up. We have no sincere apologists who want to engage. We have people who are uninformed, ill-informed, and misinformed, who are overconfident and wind up being made to look foolish and won't answer any questions. And then we have the professional apologists who've given up on skeptics and are only going after college students who don't know any better and Muslims and former Muslims because they're easier to con. Similarly, the Muslim apologists desperately don't want anything to do with the skeptics either, because they know that a good chunk of them are advocating for the most offensive, most repugnant things, including child brides, including, in some cases, genital mutilation, including, having a prophet that is a pederast, and absolutely no way out of that hole. So it's much easier for them to engage with people who aren't familiar with any of the things in their doctrine. And so that leaves us with the esoteric. I believe that God is some kind of nebulous force, or maybe we're all God, or maybe there is no God, but there is a God, or we should, and it's all these weird things. The people who would call in and say, here is a good reason to believe in this particular God, they're virtually non-existent now. And I am responsible. I am the Lord High Atheist of Austin, and I have run them all off. It has nothing to do with the fact that I surrounded myself with incredibly brilliant people who are better at this than I ever was. But yes, if you only want to talk to promise, we can make that happen. If you only want to talk to me, we can make that happen. You know what? The only one here that you can't demand to speak to as only that person is Arden. And that's because I love Arden and I don't want to subject her to that sort of crap. Did I vamp long enough for us to get calls in?
To get somebody. I know, I wish, like, where are the Christians I grew up around who are like, hey, I sincerely believe this. I think you're going to hell. Let me tell you why. Like, do they just not I mean, great. That's excellent. If people don't believe in hell anymore and they don't believe in God and Jesus, like, honestly, incredible. Love it.
Religiosity is on the decline, and a belief in literal hell and things like that is also seemingly on the decline. I don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see. Maybe we'll get somebody. Maybe. So it's 2:30 now, and that means that if church got out at noon and they all got together and they went to after services dinner with their whole family and they hung around there till like 1:30 or whatever, they're probably just now getting over here. And then now it's time for them to tune in to their favorite godless heathen program, where they tune in to laugh at us being shown up, except it never happens because nobody ever presents an evidence-based, valid and sound argument for the existence of a God or anything supernatural at all. They stopped trying.
So far, we've just...
Because the Bible says so. Woo.
So far, we've just had some great calls with fellow atheists who are also doing everything they can to help minimize the harm caused by religion. So that's the good news in all of this. It does look like we have a call from an atheist. Are you down for that while we give the theists time to...
I am.
Put their Bibles away.
I am at everyone's disposal. Have me do or not do whatever you all would like me to do. Okay. I am your trained monkey. I will clap and play the cymbals. Oh, by the way,
great. Looking forward to it.
I'm going to be doing a magic show in August at a convention. I'm not going to give other details yet, but Arden will vouch for the fact that when they asked me, it took 3 seconds to type yes. And I was immediately busy and active searching through my existing magic repertoire and looking for a few new things or some really old things to do in this show as well. And I've probably spent more time already prepping for this magic show that's not going to happen until August than I did for today's episode of the Sunday show.
I might just have to be there because of all of this. So we'll see. That would be really fun.
Doing magic is on my short list of favorite things. And I'm constantly looking to see, can I come up with a better show that I like and that entertains and teaches something altogether. So I'm planning some big stuff.
Very exciting. As long as I still love the little rubber band tricks that you bring out, because those are so fun, because you're just like hanging out and then you just do this crazy magic trick where I can't figure out how the hell you did it. And I can only imagine what a full show of all of that is going to be like.
If I'm ever at a thing and you catch me without rubber bands, you're allowed to punch me in the arm.
Okay, great. I'll just start bringing them myself too, so that there's no excuse. We've got Mike here from Texas, and he's got a question for you, Matt. Hello, Mike. You are live on the line.
Yes, I have a perspective of sorts on bad theist arguments, which somebody I knew years ago phrased it as what he called the Mormon trap. Essentially, the bad arguments where people go out and they go on mission, or they call into shows like yours, or they go kind of out in the world and they'll present absolutely terrible arguments, or they'll start into some of the scripts that quickly go into what Romans verse about, a fool has said in his heart, God doesn't exist, etc. I don't think they're actually designed to convert anyone. I think they're designed to get a bad reaction so that the people using those arguments then go scurrying back to their churches, and they get love bombed from the church when they tell the church, I tried the script you were supposed to say, and they were so mean to me. And I just kind of wonder what your perspective is on that.
I don't agree.
Yeah, I can't say I do either.
That is a level of nefarious conspiracy theory where you have Christians sitting around saying, hey, let's not bother coming up with arguments we think should convince. let's come up with things that frustrate our own members so that we can love bomb them so that they can feel like they did good. That sort of thinking not only would have never occurred to me when I was a believer, but would have been viewed as heretical and an abomination. While the arguments are bad, your job, my job as a Christian witnessing to people, was to be a conduit for the Holy Spirit. And in order for me to be a better conduit, I needed to study and pray and understand more. At no point was it, ooh, let's strategically come up with something that'll make our own followers feel good. Those things happen incidentally, not planned. It would be like suggesting that there's a cabal of preachers who all, none of them believe, and yet they're working. Let's just write the most convincing sermons that only just keep people in there. I mean, they're not even doing that. They're sharing sermons. They're selling sermons. I just did a video on a particular sermon that's just been passed around, and it's absolutely ridiculous. But no, I don't think there's an intent to give people bad arguments in order to keep them in the faith.
Yeah, I think it just works out to their advantage in that stuff inevitably does happen, and then everything is persecution. If it doesn't, if you bring this argument and you get, quote, made fun of for it, then that's just, you're being persecuted, and that's to be expected. So I think it's more of a, like Matt said, it's an incidental, but it does work to their advantage to spin the story every time and say, you're being persecuted. It's just persecution, because obviously when you go out and you make these arguments and you come back and you're like, hey, this didn't work. They're not saying like, oh, really? Well, maybe this isn't true then. They have to say something. And so what else can they say? Well, you're just being persecuted,
Yep. It's
or
spiritual warfare.
Mysteries of God. Right. Exactly.
I know that I'm doing right by God because Satan's coming after me so hard. I mean, you're right that this happens. I just don't think you're right that it was planned to happen.
I guess I have trouble with the planning aspect in that the person who originally posited the germ of this idea was a former Mormon and described the steps with Mormon teen boys, especially going off on mission, where they get sent off and they're in packs of 4 and 8, and they're all watching each other's backs and making sure that nobody gets into things that they shouldn't while they're on mission or talking to the wrong people or all the rest. And they spend a couple of years getting doors slammed in their faces. Then they go back home out into, the Western United States, kind of the hotbed areas, and return missionaries out there get treated better than like people coming back as military veterans in most of the USA. And it felt like it's very structurally built to keep those young men inside of the church and make them have this view that, wow, the external world was so evil. We got doors slammed in our face. We got yelled at. We got screamed at, and all the rest.
So, yes, those things happen, and that's why it doesn't stop. But that doesn't mean that's why it started. So, for example, in the Bible, it flatly says, "You will be persecuted for my name's sake." That sets up a persecution complex. And so when things go well, you feel like you've done good. And when things don't go well, ooh, you're in a spiritual war with Satan, and he's really coming after you hard, and you're being essentially persecuted. And so the church will reinforce that. If you come back from doing God's work and it worked out, you get a hug. And if you come back from doing God's work and it didn't work out, you get a hug. It wasn't that they sent you out to do God's work just so they could give you a hug knowing it would fail, because it doesn't always fail. It's just, hey, we're going to support you for doing the right thing. And so, the people in charge know that perhaps the success rate is abysmal, and they know here's how we will cope with the frustrations of members who are telling us, hey, the success rate is just awful. But that doesn't mean that it was planned from the get-go that way.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that perspective.
Sure.
Any other questions you had for us, Mike, before we let you go?
Nope, Mike's gone.
Oh, all right. Guess not.
Running away, eh?
All right, we've got another atheist caller. Still no theists.
It's all right.
Which
We
means that if
understand.
you are a theist and you want to call, then you're going to get to talk to us right away. But for now, we'll just chat with Alexander. Hello, Alexander. You are live on the line. How are you?
Hi. I'm all right. First, I want to start off, Matt. I called in, it would have been like late spring, early summer of 24. And you would ask me
July
a question
7th.
that, excuse me?
July 7th is the last time you called in.
July 7th. That's what it would have been. Thank you.
Yep.
When I called, you had asked me a question that shook not the foundation of my faith, but my faith as a whole. And since then, I have stopped going to church because I don't believe the dogma anymore. And I've spent the time since our conversation kind of poring over different sciences and data and astrophysics, natural sciences, history, that kind of thing. Just, I guess, looking for answers. And it's interesting. It's fascinating stuff. But I find it, for lack of a better term, spiritually unsatisfying. And I'm trying to figure out what to do next, because I feel like I'm in this weird middle ground, because I feel like a part of my faith is still kind of latched on. And my rational brain is trying to, I guess, shed it. But I'm not, like I said, I'm just kind of confused as to where to go next.
I'm trying to figure out. So my take is that what you believe is not a matter of choice. You're either convinced of something or you're not. And if you recognize that you are no longer convinced that the God claim is true or that the supernatural claims are true, then you need to be more specific with yourself when you talk about what you're having difficulty letting go. So there's orthodoxy, which is right belief, and orthopraxy, which is right action. And it may be the case that you've gotten rid of the belief, but you can't get rid of the action because you value the community. You value the way the participation makes you feel. I know atheists who still go to church who like the songs, and they like the hymns, and they like the after church dinner and the potluck, and they like the community because, as long as people think you're one of them, they're incredibly nice to you. And so you've got to come to grips, and I recommend both recoveringfromreligion.org as an organization to talk to about this, but also seculartherapy.org, because you got to figure out what it is that you're actually having difficulty giving up. Because beliefs aren't something that we give up. They just go away when there's no more justification for it.
Okay. And I think it sounds like just based off of what you said, that the thing I think I'm having trouble with is the community, because I was part of the Mormon church, and I have nothing but good memories being part of that church. And I identify non-binary. My husband is a trans man. He gave birth to all three of our kids. And not once has it come up, has it been an issue, has anyone said boo about anything. And I know other people who are LGBTQ who have had horrible, unbelievably atrocious experiences with all kinds of different churches.
Yeah,
that was never my experience.
The LDS church is basically an anti-queer hate group. It's one of the reasons why there are some individuals who I find to be incredibly reasonable and wonderful on a number of different subjects, on biology, on scripture, and other things. but they tithe to the Mormon Church, and so they are donating part of every dollar that I might send them or any support I would offer them. They're donating 10% of that at least back to a church that is essentially an anti-queer hate group. You sound like that your experience with the Mormon Church is very different from what other people's experience is, and I can only reference it because I was never Mormon, from what the church's actual positions are and where they donate the money. But I would say you could be a member of a Southern Baptist church and see racism and bigotry and homophobia writ large, and you could go to a different Southern Baptist church and get a completely different feel for it, where those things are not pronounced, they're not obvious, they're not even a day-to-day issue. And I think that maybe you have been involved with decent Mormon churches, and a good chunk of them are filled with decent people. But does that really matter if the church itself is problematic and the religion is not true? I only care if it's true. I have no reason to go to a place where my community, as wonderful as it might be to me, is contingent on me either lying or pretending to believe something or pretending to believe aspects of something that I actually find repugnant and harmful. So I don't know.
The thing I found out about the Mormon Church, that was the point where I just couldn't keep going. But and where I had a lot of problems like letting go, though, was dealing with this fact. Was I found out after I during all this, that because I looked into the church itself because I was curious about things that they had done and why people were so upset about them in the LGBTQ plus community. And again, horror stories. But the thing that I found out about that made me just stop dead in my tracks, because I lived in California at the time that this was going on, was I think it was Proposition 8.
Yep.
And they were just heavily involved with that campaign and trying to get it passed. And that was just one of those things to where I didn't, and so I'm sitting there reading how involved they were with Proposition 8 and thinking to myself, who are these people and why did I never meet any of these guys who were so involved in this? Like, it felt like such a disconnect between the church I knew and the church as they present themselves to the public.
I think I come from a background where they have similar stances on the queer community, but then also, act like amazing human beings when confronted with a person right there in front of them. And to them, it's more about, because I come from the dominionist theology, it's more about overall power over society and influence. Like, they don't mind having a few queer people in church and being nice to them because they're there and it's happening and it is what it is and you get tithes and all of that. It is more of a power grab where they want to influence society as a whole. And I would suspect some of that is going on. So the unfortunate thing is you may be face to face with some really kind people that also fully back these horrific plans and ideas and things that they're trying to attempt. And that's one of the scary things about religion, is that it protects people like that and hides that, where they'll be really nice to your face and maybe even think like they don't judge you and whatever, but they are fully backing things like Proposition 8.
So, Matt, you mentioned 2 websites. One of them was, I believe, seculartherapy.org?
Seculartherapy.org and recoveringfromreligion.org, yeah.
Recoveringfromreligion.org. That was the other one. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I'll probably end up taking a look at the bare minimum one of those, if not both. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Sure. I wish you all the best. Keep asking questions and figuring out what you're comfortable with, because at the end of the day, I mean, if you're staying tied to something because there's a community there, like, for example, this is going to be bad. Let's imagine, I'm going to make it less bad. let's imagine there's a family member that I do not like, and we fundamentally disagree on 5 incredibly important things, both political and religious. And I don't like them, and I don't want to spend time around them. But
with you so far,
I still love them in the sense, that they're part of my family, and so I value them, and I value our past and our history. And I value the relationships with other people that are interconnected with this individual. And so I continue a relationship with them for the sake of those other relationships. I'm not saying this is what's actually going on now. It's definitely something that's happened in the past, but I'm just using it as an example. It's up to me to decide how far is too far, because I got to a point where it's like, okay, I will hang out with this person or that person, this family member, this friend, because of the other relationships, and I will avoid making it difficult or problematic until I can't anymore. Until, if they're not going to be bringing up X, I won't bring it up. But the second they do, I'm shutting that shit down, and I don't care if they end up not being a part of my life. And if the other interconnected relationships choose to associate with that person instead of me, that's on them, because I need to do what's right and what's right for me. And I don't need toxic, hateful people in my life. I don't need people who are going to disrespect me, my partner, my other friends, my godless heathen friends who are done nothing to them personally, but challenging their bullshit beliefs on a regular basis, and that upsets them. It's not my fault that they're not calling in. It's not my fault that their God is punking them. It's not my fault that their God won't give them evidence. It's not my fault that their God won't even help them come up with a hint of a reasonable argument. And so they're not mad at me. They're mad at their God, who clearly does not exist, but they're going to redirect that to me because I'm the one that's saying the emperor has no clothes.
that makes a lot of sense.
I wish you the best. Keep asking questions, but we're gonna move on. We finally have a theist caller, and who knows what we're gonna get.
I appreciate all your advice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Oh.
Shall we take this call?
I just saw. Go right ahead, Promise.
Yeah. I'm excited about it.
Hi, Promise. Hi, Matt.
Hey,
it's Rainwood.
Hi, Rainwood. You're live on the Sunday show. How are you?
I'm trying to get the theists to call in. I love your show, and I want to inspire them to challenge you a little bit.
Do you think you're doing that?
It's always good. Well, just to get our brains thinking a little bit, Matt. I wanted to bring up a couple of points. So, have you guys remember an old movie called the Blue Lagoon with Brooke Shields?
Yes.
You remember that? Yeah. It sort of ties into what you guys are talking about today. You remember there was a scene in the movie when they're on a deserted island. I think it's the shipwrecked or whatever. I don't remember verbatimly about it, but they find a dead animal, and they realize death at that point. And my question to you guys, I can tell you not the day, but the year that I found out that we're all going to die. I was about 8 years old, and my dad went into the backyard, and there was a baby pigeon that we used to raise. We used to raise pigeons. And the mother didn't sit on the bird, and it died. And I could still see the spade shovel going into the ground and him putting the soil over. I started to cry. He said, Michael, you got to be a man. You got to grow up. You got to accept this part of life. And that was when I found out that people die. But my question,
what does this have to do with hell?
I'm going to tie it together, but I had a question for you guys.
I'm sorry.
Was there a point?
No.
Okay.
No.
How does it tie
we're
in
not
with hell?
here. You called in and said there is no hell. It's been a misconception. Christians are interpreting it wrong. That's the subject of the show. We took your call specifically because you're a theist to defend the very thing you called in for. We did not take your call so that you could quiz us about when we discovered that death was a real thing, because that's not the subject. So
okay,
I
you're
need
right.
you to defend
So
the hell thing.
I will do that, Matt. So
Cool.
In the Old Testament, Gehenna was a garbage pit, which they dug out and threw sheepskins in, all kinds of debris, vile people, right? And Jesus, when he came on the scene, he took Gehenna and interchanged it with hellfire. So hell.
Wait, so you're saying Jesus got it wrong? You're saying Jesus got it wrong?
No, Jesus. No, that's not what I'm saying, Matt. What I'm saying is that people have gotten it wrong. What Jesus was doing with Jordan and now, I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Jesus was okay. Here we go. So let's. You got your Bible handy? Because let's go through some scripture.
I don't have my Bible handy, but you can quote.
Okay. So are you familiar with Daniel 12, verse 2? That's in the Old Testament.
I'm pretty familiar with Daniel. It talks about knowledge increasing.
Well, so Judaism in the Old Testament don't mention much at all about anything that could really be interpreted as a hell. They don't have a particularly strong view on an afterlife, and there's this notion that people would go and sleep with their forefathers and that death was like a sleep. But Daniel chapter 12, verse 2 says, "And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt." What do you think that passage means about everlasting contempt?
I think it means everlasting annihilation.
How can there be contempt if you're annihilated? And why would you need to wake up for it to be annihilated?
I think it's a play on words there because
okay, we'll just skip that. We'll just skip that. We'll just skip that. Since you think it's a play on words. Right. What about Matthew 25, verses 41 and 46, where it specifically says, "Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment."
Referring to hell. Right?
That's not annihilation. That's everlasting punishment.
Well,
in a cursed everlasting fire.
If you took Gehenna and you burned stuff in the pit, it would just disintegrate, and it would be nothing left of it. Jesus was very famous for drawing analogies.
That's not everlasting fire or everlasting punishment. Being burned and ended is not everlasting fire or punishment. And being annihilated is not everlasting fire punishment. What about John chapter 5, verses 28 and 29, that says, "The hour is coming in which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation."
Yeah, that's a scripture. I can respond to that, Matt.
Okay.
During the resurrection, during the 1,000-year reign of Christ, when people are resurrected, the ones that are last shall be first in chronological order to be resurrected. Their resurrection will prove to be a resurrection of life or death, depending on what they do once they become spiritually reconnected with the Heavenly Father. And that can be seen in Isaiah, cross-referencing with Isaiah, where it says, although a person be a small child, he'll die although a man be 100 years old, he'll die a mere boy. Because in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, there are people that are going to die in ignorance. They're not going to know, but they're not going to know Christ. They're not going to know the kingdom. And if they die in ignorance, they'll get a resurrection. But that resurrection will prove to be a righteous resurrection or unrighteous resurrection, depending on what they do. When they can't blame it on the devil, he's locked up. They can't blame it on imperfection, it's getting better. So that's my explanation for that.
Okay, so you're just making a bunch of shit up, and you're ignoring that Matthew 13 points out that hell is a place of eternal torment, wailing and gnashing of teeth and fire. Matthew 22 says the same thing. Luke 16 says the same thing. Mark 9, Matthew 18, right. 2 Thessalonians, Jude, Revelation 14, Revelation 20. All of these say something different, and you're saying none of them can be taken at face value, but you went back to Isaiah, and based on a passage, you have a model of resurrection that excludes the very hell that shows up in these 18 to 20 verses.
Well, even you can cross-reference it with Ecclesiastes 9:5.
I just did an entire video. I just did an entire video on Ecclesiastes. If you're just going to pick out a personalized interpretation of Ecclesiastes and a personalized interpretation of Isaiah, why on earth are all these verses in the Gospels, including in red letters, suggesting that there is a resurrection to damnation that is contempt, everlasting fire, and everlasting torment? Why do those passages exist?
Again, fire represents, if you take a log and you burn it outside, and you take some clothes that you don't want and you burn it, it disintegrates, it's gone. So
yes,
fire,
that's not everlasting. I swear, Rainwood, if you keep ignoring what the actual words say and just repeating yourself, we will move on. Because I'm asking questions and you're not answering it. You're saying fire represents this, and if you throw clothes in a fire, they're going to be destroyed. Correct. But throwing clothes in a fire does not produce eternal fire and does not produce eternal torment. It produces an end, a termination of those.
So, given that you just did the piece on Ecclesiastes, which I thoroughly enjoyed, 90% of it, it says the dead have conscious of nothing at all. The living know that they shall die, but as for the dead, they conscious of nothing at all. It also says
that's an Old Testament book that is
sinning,
you don't get to ignore what the New Testament says by pointing out that passages in the Old Testament don't say the same thing.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But
don't think you do, or you wouldn't keep fucking doing it.
Okay, so for the people out there that think that there's a soul and you suffer, that's the main reason why I was calling, because it says, are we all damned to hell or something like that was on the message for today.
Yes, our promise and I going to go to hell. Our promise and I going to go to hell.
I don't believe you. I don't believe there is a hell.
Why do you not believe there's? I don't believe there's a hell either, but I'm not an advocate of the Bible. So why do you think all those verses in the Bible clearly talk about something that is viewed as a hell, that has traditionally been portrayed as a hell, that is described as everlasting torment, everlasting punishment, everlasting damnation, everlasting contempt, and eternal fire and anguish and wailing and gnashing of teeth? Why do you think it says that instead of those who die outside of Christ will cease to exist?
Well, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they already thought that Jesus was a kook when he came on the scene, right? But they thought he was even more crazy when he said, you scribes and hypocrites, you could be liable to the fiery hell. Okay, now they're looking at him saying, how could I be liable to a fire that's been out for thousands of years? He was referring back to Gehenna, which is in the Old Testament.
I'm sorry, Rainwood, but I am absolutely, completely, fully, and totally unimpressed with your ability to avoid the fucking subject or the question at hand and try to go down some, I know this other fact that might distract. What the Pharisees and the Sadducees said is irrelevant. I'm reading from the red letters attributed to Jesus. Why would the red letters attributed to Jesus suggest that there's eternal torment, eternal wailing and gnashing of teeth, judgment, contempt, suffering, eternal fire, instead of saying what you think is true, there is no eternal torment, the dead outside of Christ will cease to exist? Why would Jesus say one and not the other?
Well, you're probably going to hang the phone up on me. I have to say that Jesus did a lot of parables. He spoke in parables.
I'm going to mute you. I'm going to let Promise talk to you because you've called 22 fucking times. And the number of times that I've hung up on you for being dishonest and problematic is pretty high. And I don't want to do that because I'm having a good day. But I will not continue to engage if your explanation for why Jesus, who you think is God, got the message wrong is because when he said this, he was merely speaking in a parable, and that he clearly was too fucking stupid to have the foresight to realize that millennia would go by with people getting this wrong and preaching the wrong message based on the words attributing to him, even through multiple translations, that Jesus was just the dumbest fucking God in existence who did not understand how his words were going to be abused and misused. And you were going to come along to tell us what they really mean while making all kinds of excuses for why your God is the shittiest communicator in history. And so on that note, I'm going to bring you back and see if Promise has some thoughts. Because I've quoted scripture and the Christian has failed.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, my question would just my question would be, how do you know what Jesus actually said or didn't say and what he meant and didn't mean? How are you so sure about that?
I feel like if I call 22 times and I have been a burden to you guys, I don't want to be a burden anymore. I won't. This will be the last time I call.
You coward!
I promise you.
You coward!
Well, if you don't want me to speak,
you're an absolute coward. You're an absolute coward, Rainwood. You
I'm
keep avoiding the subject.
Yes,
you are. You're absolutely a coward. You are absolutely a coward. You are now running. You are absolutely a coward. You are ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You will not defend it. You are unable to actually present scripture or argue honestly. And then when I point out how you've repeatedly done it, now you're going to boo-hoo-hoo. I'm a burden on you. I'll never call again. You're a coward. Jesus would be ashamed of you if you were real. Jesus would be ashamed of you. Jesus would be ashamed of you, you lukewarm Christian.
I'm trying to talk to you with respect, but, you know.
Fuck your respect. I don't want your respect. You can respect me by actually being honest and answering the questions. It's not respectful. It's not respectful. It is not respectful. It is not respectful of you to ignore the questions and come up with excuses. That's not what respect is.
You, Matt.
You did. You repeatedly.
You're probably going to hang up on me. You're probably going to hang up.
No, I'm going to mute you, Captain Coward. You're probably going to hang up on me. You deserve to be hung up on again, just like the 21 previous times. But I would like you to answer promises question. So I'm going to let you stay on to do that. Try again.
Hello?
Yeah. So
Promise to ask you a
do you
question.
remember what I asked?
I promise. Yeah, how do I know that Jesus'
Hi.
words were true?
How do you know what he even really said or not? We can maybe start there.
I believe the word of God is God's word, and to go into all the things that make me believe that Jesus' words were true would it would take more than a phone call to spit it out here. And
well, I'm just trying to understand, like, so when you read something in the Bible and it says Jesus said this, why do you believe that that's true? Why do you not think that maybe somebody just wrote that and claimed it and we don't know what or if Jesus said that thing?
At some point, you have to have faith. You have to believe.
Why do you choose to have faith about that and not about some other God or some other claim? Why not have faith that Jesus didn't say any of those things and that the Bible is false?
I believe because what Jesus did when he came to the earth was he gave sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, letting people walk.
But why do you believe that happened? But Rainwood, why do you believe that happened?
Because it's consistent. It's consistent. It's a promise. It's everything we were talking about earlier about death, about hell.
I have a book here that my friend wrote, a novel, and it's significantly more consistent. The Bible is not consistent, but consistency still doesn't prove it. Even if the Bible was incredibly consistent, which it isn't, and it's been written, rewritten, it's had books removed and added. But even if it was super consistent, consistency does not make something true. Consistency in a story. I can tell you a story right now that's more consistent than the Bible, and that doesn't mean that what I'm telling you is true. So how did you determine that Jesus actually said these things in the Bible that somebody has claimed that he said?
Because the Bible was written over thousands of years with 44 different authors, and it aligns itself perfectly from Genesis to Revelation.
But you didn't answer. So I just explained. First of all, it's not consistent. What were Jesus's last words on the cross? What were, can you see the face of God without dying or not? There's all kinds of inconsistencies throughout the Bible, but my question for you is not that. I just said let's say that it is the most consistent book ever. That consistency in a story does not make the story true. So what is your evidence? What is your reason for believing the claims that are made in the Bible, whether consistent or not?
It logically makes sense to me. For instance, it logically makes sense to me that Job would say, send me back to Sheol or the grave, interchangeable with Hades and Sheol.
But Rainwood, it logically makes sense to me when Frodo in The Hobbit, he's not in The Hobbit, when Frodo in The Lord of the Rings is struggling to get rid of the ring because of the power it has on him. Why something making logical sense about a story to you, which is a subjective thing, because I'll tell you right now, the entire book of Job makes no sense to me whatsoever, and it's stupid. That doesn't make something true. I just watched an incredible movie the other day. It made so much logical sense to me. It's not a true story, though. So how did you reach the conclusion that the Bible is true?
The story of Job might not be true.
Do you care if it's true or not? Do you care if it's true or not? Do you care if the Bible is true or not? Do you care?
I care about the message.
So you don't do you believe that a God exists? Because a lot of people will tell you that one of the many. No, it's okay. There's a long delay. A lot of people will tell you that some of the messages in the Bible make it very clear that you need to be worshiping a very specific God. So do you believe that that God exists or not?
I do believe there's a God that exists. I don't believe
Right.
Jesus
So
was
why do
God.
you
I believe he was God's son.
That's fine. But you believe there is a God. Why do you believe that there is a God?
I believe there is a God because just look, we've gone through this on other calls, and you call it the tree explanation, but there's too many powerful things that have to happen, and consistency
I don't know
with
what you
science
mean by
and
that.
everything else. There's too many things that have to happen for there to be life here. Now, has it been ransacked? Yeah. Mankind has ruined things. They ruin everything they touch.
Is that true?
But yeah, and I think the Bible is true because on the issue that you guys are bringing up as far as hell today, there's an explanation where you don't have an explanation.
We don't have an
You don't have
explanation
an
for what?
explanation. Why you want to live? If you're given health, a reasonable amount of health, you want to continue to live on. And the reason why I started the conversation with the Blue Lagoon was because I believe, and the Bible is consistent with this, that death is learned. It's not hardwired into our souls, or when I say soul, I mean the body. I don't mean it's something
Are you?
different than the body.
I'm trying to follow you. Are you trying to say that because humans don't just immediately kill ourselves the moment we experience life, that means that there's a God because that God made us want to stay alive?
Yeah, we have eternity written in our hearts. We have eternity written in our hearts. The Bible is very clear about that, and that's why when Job said, "I'm suffering here,"
Rainwood, you're all over the place right now, so I need us to stay focused on one thing at a time. Do you want to talk about this claim that eternity is written on our hearts, or do you want to talk about the fact that humans continue living? Okay, so the Bible says eternity is written on our hearts. Do you think that there is literal writing on our heart?
No, of course,
the muscle
not
that's in our body.
But
so what do you mean by that? What do you think that is meant?
What I mean by that, if I was to shelter you from a small baby when you were born and put you in an environment where you were sheltered from seeing or witnessing death, you would not know it until you learned it. It wouldn't be like going to the bathroom. It wouldn't be like wanting your bottle to drink milk. It wouldn't be anything natural.
I don't understand.
It would be something you have to learn.
We do not, as most things in life, work that way. So I don't understand how that's proof of anything.
Not really.
Yes, it is. With things that aren't happening to you and haven't happened to you. Correct. If you kept me in a room and I didn't know anything else, I would not know that the Mona Lisa exists until you go and show it to me. If you tell me that someday my hair is going to turn gray and I'm 5 years old and my hair hasn't turned gray yet, I'm not going to know that that's even an option. You're right, until I see that it is. There's all kinds of things. Either I still do not understand how you are getting to an entire God claim from this. So how does somebody knowing or not knowing about death get us to the point that there's a God?
It's just one of the many points that the Bible brings out that shows that
no. We still haven't made a point yet because because you still haven't told me what you think it means to have it written on your heart.
That's why I was just answering the question. When it says that it's written on the hearts of men, meaning men and women, of course, that eternity's been written there, it means that we have eternity, the feeling of eternity to go on and on and on without the capability of fulfilling that urge. It would be like me giving you a pizza pie after you haven't eaten for 4 days and saying you can look at it, but you can't have it. This is why people get so upset about death. because it wasn't meant to be. According to the scriptures, it wasn't meant to be.
No.
That's my explanation. It's
Rainwood,
learned behavior.
there's so many explanations for why people avoid death, and none of it has to do with a God. I can't even understand the point that you're trying to make yet. You're saying one thing and then you're somehow attaching it to this next big thing, and I'm trying to follow your logic and I'm not able to follow it. There are all kinds of people that do want to die. But we're living creatures. Of course, we want to continue to exist. Animals are doing it. Trees are doing it. Bacteria is doing it. That means nothing to me other than, of course, we want to keep doing the thing that we're doing.
An animal, I have a little dog, and my dog doesn't say, for instance, next Tuesday I'm thinking next Tuesday I want to go play with the poodle down the street, but then I know that I only have 3 years to live. My life expectancy is
why not? Why doesn't your dog have that ability? Rainwood, why can't your dog do that?
Because it's not made in God's image. Because
why not?
The man is made.
Why did God decide to make? Why? Why did God decide that animals wouldn't get the same rights and the same abilities?
Because He said,
why did He make some creatures better? Why did He not do that for all?
Because
why does your dog not get to have the same experience
I'm answering
as you?
the question. He said you will have dominion over the animals of the earth.
Why?
Now, Matt likes snakes.
He didn't need to do that.
Pigeons.
Why? Rainwood, I asked you a question. Why?
Why did he do it? I can't answer why he made the earth.
You seem to know everything so far, and now suddenly I've brought you this question. So why did God decide to make some creatures in His image and decide to make others that have to be ruled over? That seems kind of fucked up. Those animals consent to that? Did they get to choose? Did they get to choose to be ruled over?
With all due respect, Promise, not some. Only humans are made in His image and likeness, and only humans have eternity written on their heart.
Rainwood, why did God decide to make humans in His image and then decide to make another group of creatures not in His image that are going to be ruled over and hunted and eaten by this other group?
Well, there's two questions there. You want to know why He has animals hunting other animals and killing each other?
Oh, that's not my question, Rainwood. My question is, why did God decide to make humans in His image? This is one question. Why did God decide to make humans in His image and then make this other group of creatures that are ruled over by humans? Why did He make subservient creatures?
That's like me saying, why didn't God make man with wings so he could fly? Man is made in God's image.
Sure, we can ask that question next if you want.
Man is made in God's image and likeness.
Can you answer my question or not, Rainwood? Rainwood, you're ignoring my question. I understand why Matt gets frustrated because I don't think you've answered a single one of my questions this entire conversation, and then you've just somehow moved on to. If you can pause, well, I'm going to mute you. This is my last attempt. This is the question I have for you because you've gone all over some weird places. So now I have a weird question for you because you seem to know a lot about God and a lot about the Bible. And I would like an answer on this one thing. Why did God decide that He would make some creatures that would be humans that would rule over another group of creatures that would suffer from it? You're unmuted and you can answer.
I don't know. I'm going to answer you by saying I don't know. I also don't know why He made the sky blue and not red all the time.
But Rainwood, you're the one that brought up the example of how your dog doesn't have these things and all of that. So you're using these same arguments to try to prove something. And I'm pointing out to you that these are not examples of anything. In fact, they get you in more trouble if we actually continue down those talking points. So I don't know. I don't have any other. You just said you don't know, which I think is the most honest thing and the best answer you've given so far to anything in this conversation.
2 eyes on us. I don't know why God would give us 2 eyes and not 3. I don't know. It would be helpful to have a third eye behind our head, but that's the way God made us.
Yeah,
You're asking me
Rainwood.
to
I
answer a
think
question.
unless
I
Matt
don't know the
has
answer to
more unless Matt has more he wants to chat with you about, I see that we've got another theist calling, and I just
I want to
unfortunately
say
don't
have a
feel that
good
we
day.
were ever able
I don't
to.
mean to be argumentative. And I did research math.
Then don't ever
It's
call
fine to
again.
be
The whole
argumentative.
purpose is
That's
for
the point
you
of
to
the
be
show.
argumentative. It would be nice if you were argumentative and instead of obfuscating. So Promise's question was, why did God create only humans in his image? And my only question is this: do you have any way, because you mentioned, oh, I don't know why he made us with 2 eyes instead of 3. I can absolutely confirm that humans have 2 eyes instead of 3. Do you have any way that we can confirm that God made us in his image?
No, I can't explain
Goodbye.
to you.
This is why people don't call, because I'm happy to have these conversations and we'll try them a number of different ways. But I ask the very simple question, which is, can you demonstrate that this is true? And the answer, to his credit, honestly, is no. The only question that he gave a straight answer to was the one that is an admission that he can't demonstrate that what he believes is true. It's his entire case is, oh, that's all because humans are the only ones made in God's image, but I can't prove that. So trust me, bro, it's the case. And by the way, that was the same thing as his version of his response on hell. There is no hell. People got it wrong. Trust me, bro. Why does Jesus talk about it? I don't know. He's speaking in parables. Why is he presenting something that has confused people and has been misrepresented for thousands of years until you come along? I don't know. Trust me, bro. I'm so done with trust me, bro. That's what preachers do. Trust me, bro.
Yep.
But we got another
the
Christian who believes in hell.
Okay. Let's hear it. Let's talk to Nathaniel.
Hello.
Hey, Nathaniel.
Hey,
You are live on the Sunday show.
Cool. So, yeah, I'd like to first clarify that I do believe in a hell, and I do believe that God has good reasons for creating a hell and for sending certain people there.
Do you know what they are?
Well, so as you know, humans, we live, we age, and we die. But see, we could either choose to live by our fleshly desires, or we choose to live by things that are eternal. And the only thing that's right and that matters are the things that last forever, because everything else is just gone.
Is the hell that you believe in one of eternal torment?
Yes.
Okay. So I asked you, what good reason would God have for there being a hell? And your answer was, well, we live, we age, and we die. Why is that a good reason for there being a hell? And by the way, why do we live, age, and die? Did God have to make us that way?
Okay, so you know Adam and Eve, the story of Adam and Eve, right? So they ate the fruit, they disobeyed.
No, who's
willingly.
that?
What was that?
No, I'm not familiar with that story at all.
With Adam and Eve?
Who's that?
So Adam and Eve were the, the first two people in the Bible. They were the first created of humans. They were a man and a woman, and they were placed in a garden.
Are you saying these were the actual first two humans?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Well, that's the thing. Is asking, how do we know there's a God? There's, all we can do is gather the evidence and present our case.
What's the evidence? What's the evidence that Adam and Eve were the first two humans?
Well, that's like saying, what's the evidence for a God? Like, it's you see the
what's
evidence
the
for
evidence
yourself.
for God? Yes, I know what it's like to ask what's the evidence for. I don't need you to tell me. If you have no evidence for any of this, you can just admit that instead of saying that's like saying what's the evidence for this? Yes, When I ask for evidence for a claim, that's what I want, is evidence for that claim. You've now claimed there is a God and that God created Adam and Eve as the first humans, and we are asking you, what is the evidence for that?
The evidence is the manuscripts that have been found and recorded and spread throughout the world as the Bible.
There are no manuscripts, and so what you're pointing to is copies of translations of copies of a story for which we have no evidence. What reason do we have to think that the story is true is what we're asking. You can't point to the story and say the story is true because you have a story.
Another reason would be that if there was a God, then he would obviously give us like a manual to life.
No,
so we
sir.
know how to live it and know how to gain salvation.
No, sir. No, sir.
Why not?
You are asserting that if there is a God, he would give us a manual. You don't get to assume there is a God, nor do you get to assume that there is a God that would give us a manual, nor do you get to assume that the book you're pointing to is in fact a manual from God. You have to provide evidence that it's a manual from God.
Okay, well...
Yeah, you're saying
so
very
Jesus,
similar. These are very similar arguments that people...
There's lots of eyewitness accounts of that. Just like there were eyewitness accounts
Nathaniel.
of, Christopher Columbus.
Nathaniel,
we're asking for the
you're
evidence.
making the same arguments that people calling in to defend the Quran would make. And so far, you both have equal amounts of evidence. So we're asking for specifics here.
Well, I wouldn't say there's hard evidence, like experimental evidence that we can see atoms and stuff. But I would say that
I don't need you to tell me. I don't need you to tell me. I don't need you to tell me what evidence is missing. I need you to provide the evidence that should convince us.
Well, evidence. If you define evidence as like mathematical evidence, or like, then there's.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
Nathaniel, did either myself or Promise utter the word mathematical?
No, but
No, you don't have to add a but.
Okay, so
that was a yes or no question. That was a yes. No. That was a yes or no question. You don't need to add a but.
Okay.
You can just admit that you don't have any good evidence and that you believe something without good reason. But if we keep asking you for the evidence, I'm sorry, but talking over me is never going to fucking happen on this show, guaranteed. So let me finish.
Sorry. Okay.
We're asking you for the evidence for God, or that Adam and Eve were the first humans created, evidence that you think should convince us, because it's the evidence perhaps that convinced you. I don't need to hear what evidence you don't have. I don't need to hear how bad it is. I don't need to hear anything. I just need you to explain why we should believe that the story is true. Can you do that or not?
Yes.
Cool, do it.
Do you believe Christopher Columbus is real?
Not anymore.
Do you believe George Washington was real?
I believe he existed, yes.
What evidence do you have of that?
I have reports from independent historians and scholars, and the fact that we have things signed by him as the first president of the United States. That doesn't mean that I believe every story about George Washington. Like I don't believe he never told a lie, and I don't believe that he wouldn't lie about cutting down a cherry tree. But we have sufficient evidence to say that this individual almost certainly existed. As a matter of fact, it would be preposterous to say that this person didn't exist. However, I don't believe that George Washington was magical.
No. Okay. So, but you're saying we know he exists because we have reports of him existing.
Nathaniel, yes, I gotta stop you real quick. Because I just want to ask, do you really believe this stuff? Because you're now asking us questions when we've asked you for evidence. And I understand these questions because these are the exact same ones that the apologists were teaching me to ask, even literally the George Washington one, all of this. So I understand that maybe that's what you've been taught to do or what you've heard, and you're, just going with that. But I'm looking to have an honest conversation where if let's just say you know nothing about me. I don't know anything. You don't know if I believe in anything at all. And you're telling me, hey, here's this thing I believe. I think you should believe it. Now tell us why we should believe it. There shouldn't be asking us questions about other things we believe. That doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't to me sound
Well,
like
no,
somebody
I
who's
had
able
to
to actually
ask that.
communicate a belief that they have and
No,
a
you
good
don't have
reason
to
for
ask
me to believe it as well. You don't have to ask us a single question in order to share your evidence. There's other people listening right now, not just Matt and I. So you should be able to tell us what it is that you believe and why you believe it without asking us questions. That's if somebody,
Well, because it would
if
be
my friend, if I
illogical
tell my friend,
to.
if I tell my friend,
Okay,
hey, there's
I'm
this
going to
event
mute
that you should
you.
come to with me. Thank you. If my friend, if I'm trying to convince my friend of something, I'm not asking them questions. I'm giving them my argument. I'm telling them the reasons. I think you should go to this thing with me because this, and this. I'm not sitting there like, well, have you been to an event before? Because then I'm just manipulating instead of having an honest conversation. So if you want to give us your actual reasons for belief and why you think we should believe, I'd be interested to hear those. It shouldn't start with questions about if we believe that George Washington existed.
Promise is completely correct. And at no point, I would advise you very strongly to just give the evidence, because the words that came out of your mouth right before I muted you would have gotten you into serious trouble, because you were suggesting that you did need to ask us questions because it would be illogical, presumably, for you to present something, blah, blah, blah. No, we're asking you for the evidence. Any flaws, real or imagined, in our epistemology will be exposed once we start dealing with your evidence. But if you think you're going to come in here and lecture me in particular on what is illogical or irrational, you are here. I'm going to unmute you. Just give us the evidence. What is the evidence that we should accept to be convinced that a God exists and created Adam and Eve?
Okay, the number one evidence that I would say to you is the many reports and manuscripts that were written about Jesus, and these people who've written them about Jesus.
Nathaniel, we have no manuscripts, and writings about Jesus are not proof that there's a God. They're not even evidence for God. They are the claim that there's a God. What evidence supports the claim?
Then I would have to present evidence like the world is obviously created and carefully designed, and like fine-tuning arguments, stuff like that.
Okay, why haven't you done that? Once again, instead of doing it, you're telling us what you would have to do, or that's like this. If you're not ready, call back when you're ready. But you're supposed to be ready at all times, right?
That's all the evidence that I can give you. And that these people were willing to die for the reports. That's one piece of evidence that I would give to you.
Okay. So somebody pointed out that I was wrong when I said we don't have manuscripts, we don't have autographs, and that correction is correct. That's what I meant. So we do manuscripts being writings, but we don't have autographs, and we don't know who wrote these things. And you're wrong when you say that they're written by eyewitnesses. That's not necessarily the case. But even if they were, these are still the stories. We need evidence to believe the stories. I lied to you earlier when I said I was unfamiliar with Adam and Eve. I actually have studied the Bible in great depth and taught it for the entirety of my life from the age of 5 onward, and was going to be a preacher. Of course, I'm familiar with the story of Adam and Eve. I was being facetious in, do you have any way of demonstrating it? Because you should be aware that there are many different Christians and entire denominations who do not think that Adam and Eve were real people. They don't think that that story was literally true. And the notion that those two people were literally real is debunked by science's understanding of the origins of life. And so Genesis gets the order of events wrong, and there weren't two individuals created. For example, the scientific mitochondrial Eve it's a constantly shifting target, because that is just our oldest matriarchal ancestor. All we wanted was Why should we believe this? And if you're just going to say there's a bunch of stories, why don't you believe the bunch of stories for other religions?
So it's just the stories, and I mean, it's not just the stories. It's also like just using basic like reasoning. I'm not saying you don't have basic reasoning, but like what I'm trying to say is like if we look from an unbiased
you're done talking
standpoint,
now, Nathaniel. You're done talking now, Nathaniel, because I keep asking you for evidence. I teach this shit. I don't need you telling me that we need basic reasoning. I need you to provide that basic reasoning. I need you to show, because you said it was a bunch of reports, and then when I said a bunch of reports are the claim, and that's insufficient, and why do you not accept a bunch of reports from other religions? Instead of answering that question, you then realized that you were about to fuck up and suggest that the rest of us don't have basic reasoning skills. Here's your last chance. Use those basic reasoning skills to construct a valid and sound syllogism where the conclusion is, therefore God exists.
Yes. Oh, well. Okay, I don't have hard evidence like you've been saying.
I'm sorry, Nathaniel. You don't have anything. I'm going to mute you and you're going to listen. I didn't ask you for hard evidence just now. I asked you to demonstrate that you have a basic understanding of basic reasoning by constructing a valid and sound syllogism where the conclusion is, therefore God exists. I'm going to bet money that you can't even tell me what a syllogism is. So here we go. Let me unmute you. Nathaniel, what's a syllogism?
Know what that means.
Cool. Then you shouldn't be calling in to try to pretend to lecture people on basic reasoning because you don't know what the fuck it is.
Okay.
A syllogism is a structured logical argument. A syllogism is a structured logical argument. In its basic form, in propositional logic, there are premises that lead to a conclusion. And there's only a handful of different forms that this syllogism can take. Premise 1, premise 2, conclusion is the simplest form. You have major premises and minor premises and connecting terms. And because of that, there's a limited number of versions of that argument, ways you can piece things together with all statements or any statements, etc. All of this could have been found in a simple Wikipedia search on validity and soundness. But Aristotle and his band of merry logicians, who are the foundation for why we all have basic reasoning and basic logic and can talk about this, went through all of the possible syllogistic forms and determined which ones are valid. And since you don't know what valid means, a valid syllogism is one where if the premises are true, the conclusion necessarily must be true. We also understand that formal fallacies of structure are ones where if the argument is structured in a way where true premises do not necessarily lead to a true conclusion, then the conclusion is unreliable, undefined, unknown. If you don't understand logical fallacies, if you don't understand how to put together a syllogism, you should never utter the words basic reason or logic again until you do. Do you have evidence at all other than the claims? For example, that Jesus is God?
No.
Okay. Thanks for calling. Now, before I hang up, I appreciate that. Why then do you believe that hell is real?
Because I believe that true evil exists, and truly evil people cannot change, even if given an eternity. And if they're forever truly evil, then they must be forever truly punished.
Okay. When you say true evil exists, do you think evil exists as a thing unto itself, or that evil is a description of what people do?
It's what people do and what they think and how they feel.
Okay. If people don't last forever, why would you think that their evil lasts forever?
The only thing about people that don't last forever is the flesh, the body. But since
that's
the soul
all there is
forever,
to people. There not only is there no evidence for a soul, but there's significant evidence that there cannot be anything like a soul. Every identifiable function of a soul is a function of the brain. So, for example, are you aware that in some cases when people are having incredible seizures, they will go in and they will sever the corpus callosum, dividing the brain into two completely different halves in order to stop these seizures. And the two halves of that brain can communicate independently, and the two halves of that brain have different personalities, including one half of the brain can be an atheist and one half of the brain can be a Christian. Are you aware of studies like that?
Not that specific one.
Okay. What would you offer as an explanation to that person who's had their corpus callosum split and now communicates, thinks, acts, and expresses two completely different identities, one of which is a believer and one of which is not? When we cut their brain in half, did we create a whole nother soul? Did we isolate the soul to half of the brain? Did we split a soul in half? What did we do?
Well, I don't have an answer to that specifically.
Okay. Is it possible for there to be a conscious identity, an agent, that does not have a soul?
Could you say that one more time?
Is it possible for there to be a conscious agent, a thinking being that can communicate, that is soulless?
I would say no.
Okay. So in that case, when we split this and we created a separate personality, we either created a new soul or we split a soul in half, or, well, there can't be one and a half without a soul. So both halves have to have a soul. If that person was a Christian prior and after the operation, both halves are no longer Christian, are those souls going to hell?
That one's a very complicated one. I would say that only God knows the person's heart before he was severed in the brain.
What about people? Correctly. Like, do you think that I am pure evil?
If you were to, I really don't mean any offense by this, but from my,
you can't offend me. Only the stupidity offends me.
Okay. So, but if you were to die in unbelief, eventually, then I think that would be the point where you could be truly evil.
If I die in unbelief, if I die without believing in the God that you're advocating, that makes me purely evil, right then, right?
Yes, but it's not yes.
Why? What if? So, like, for example, there are people who have slaughtered entire villages, and there are people who have killed, cooked, and eaten other human beings. Can they be saved and go to heaven?
I think that some people could believe in God without knowing that they believe in God.
That wasn't my question.
If they were a pure soul, I believe it's possible, yes.
Okay. So someone who slaughters an entire village and eats it could repent and become saved and go to heaven. And yet,
I thought you were talking about the village.
No. I'm talking about the person that destroyed that village and ate them. Can they be saved?
I would say that it is possible, but probably
that's
very,
all
very,
I
very
asked.
unlikely.
That's all. I don't know how you know how likely or unlikely it is. Are you God? Doesn't the Bible say that only God knows who is saved? How are you determining how likely something is?
Well, I would just.
Have you had access to the Lamb's Book of Life?
It's true. Yeah, you're right. Only God knows.
So only God knows. And yet you're the one making proclamations that I become pure evil if I remain in disbelief. How could it possibly be just for Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed and ate people, to go to heaven while I go to hell?
Well, if that wasn't the case, then it would be just. I believe that Jeffrey Dahmer went to hell.
No. Jeffrey Dahmer claimed that he accepted Christ and was saved prior to his death. You have no way of knowing, but you've already admitted that's possible. So you're willing to accept that it's possible that Jeffrey Dahmer is in heaven and that I will go to hell And I would like to know, how do you consider that scenario, which is possible, just?
Because, okay, this is going to sound really, like, odd, but since human lives are temporary, even if he killed 8 people, since his eternity is infinitely longer than the lifetimes of those people, I believe that God is that merciful and could provide a chance because it's his eternity.
I'm sorry, Nathaniel, what was the question I asked?
How would it be possible to justly send Jeffrey Dahmer to heaven?
No, I asked, how could that scenario be just? And then you came in talking about mercy. Is God perfectly just?
Yes.
Then God cannot be merciful, because justice means you get what you deserve. And perfect justice means you get perfectly what you deserve. And mercy is by definition giving you what you don't deserve. And so God could either be perfectly merciful or God could be perfectly just, but he cannot be both just and merciful.
Well, I would say that since Jesus, he took all the punishments, I would say that by Jesus taking the punishment himself, he's still being like a just, because there's still punishment being paid. So I think that was probably the whole point of.
So I have no reason to believe any of that's true, but none of that changes the scenario where Dahmer goes to heaven and I go to hell.
Because I think true repentance does exist even for killers.
I didn't ask anything at all about true repentance. I asked about a scenario where Dahmer goes to heaven and I go to hell.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Cool. See if you can come up with an answer and call us back.
Okay.
Cheers. Thanks, Nathaniel. I appreciate the fact that we finally got to, we can have a talk. It should be obvious now. Promise and I are not here to just ask you trick questions. We're here to ask you difficult questions because that's how you get to the truth. If we were just like, hey, why should we believe in God? And you're like, oh, because the Bible says so. And we were like, oh, hell yeah. Why didn't we think of that? I mean, clearly we're going to ask, okay, but why should we believe this? And so everything in Nathaniel's view is about his particular version of who he thinks God is and who he thinks Jesus was and how he thinks the universe works. The problem is that he doesn't have evidence for any of those, or what I would say is sufficient evidence to justify believing any of those, including how the universe works or what's a soul or how does, there's no path forward for that.
Yep.
Hey, y'all, real quick, before we hit that last call, if we could just ask the audience, I see there's about 1,800 people currently watching. If y'all could hit the like button and subscribe, those things help the channel a ton, and they're totally free. So please, if you're watching, it's like it's on your TV, you're doing chores at the house, if you don't mind taking a quick second to hit that like button for us, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
If you are happy that we got Nathaniel to talk about his thoughts on hell and acknowledge that he didn't necessarily have justification for it now, you need to click the like button. You also need to go out and remind people that the showtime moved from 2 p.m. Central start time to 1 p.m. Central. And that way we'll maybe get calls in a little bit earlier. Also, don't forget, you can go to patreon.com/calltheline and linemerch.com to support what we do there, as well as clicking, like and subscribe and ringing the bell and getting those notifications. We have one more caller.
Let's chat with them.
Sweet.
Hey, Lux, you are live on the line with Promise and Matt.
Hi. Is my audio quality okay?
I think so, for now.
It's acceptable. I can at least understand you. And I could tell that you're not the Lux I know.
Good. Oh, my bad. There is a bit of a delay, which I recognize.
How can we help?
So the context for my question is that, and I have a bit of a script that I'm reading just so that I can stay on track. my dad randomly inserts his horrific religious and conspiratorial beliefs into our everyday conversations, and I'm trying to reconcile the juxtaposition of what his claims and beliefs are versus how he acts in regard to his love and kindness towards me and others. My question is, do you have any similar experiences that you learned from, or general advice on how to manage or process that?
For me, yes, I have a lot of experience with that, unfortunately. But what I decided is that I needed to figure out if I wanted to have relationship with my family or not, and that was a very personal decision based off of my own personal reasons of why I decided to stay in relationship with them. And the next decision after that was how to do that in a healthy way moving forward. And so I can still interact with them and have conversations and, spend time with them in doses, but there are boundaries around what we will talk about. So if my family was continuing to bring up or say any of the stuff that you say that you're dealing with, I would no longer be talking with them. We don't talk about the things that I am not comfortable having conversations with them about, because I wouldn't feel comfortable continuing to have a relationship with them. And that's a weird situation I'm in, where I'm choosing to stay, I don't know, in relationship with my family, even though they could say some really offensive things. But I don't want to know if they think I'm going to hell or not. I just don't, because I've decided that I want peace, that this is something in my life that I am okay with, as long as they can respect the boundaries. So I set very strict boundaries. That would be my number one piece of advice, is to set those boundaries, or else you're just going to grow resentful of the relationship anyways. And that's not going to help anybody. So either you decide that this relationship is not healthy enough for you to participate in, or you set boundaries that make it a healthy enough relationship that you can participate in, whether that means you only see them once a year, whether that means you don't have phone calls, whether that means you leave the family group chat, whatever that looks like for you, you have to figure it out. But don't live with things the way that they are. It's going to end up just rotting everything from the inside out.
Yeah, I really want to help push my dad out of religion by just having conversation about it, and that is a motivator for why I allow it to happen. But there's also this wanting to know how bad it is, so that I can go, yes, he's truly irredeemable, if that makes sense.
I could say things, but you are not going to like me when I'm done.
Okay, that's fine. Please go ahead.
Stop trying to change people. Stop having that as your goal. And stop looking to try to figure out whether or not somebody's irredeemable, because you're not qualified to know. You have no idea what might change somebody's mind. Maybe you're not the person to do it. Maybe you could have 5,000 conversations with your dad. I had to give up on my mom, not because I would guess that she's never going to change her mind, but I'm pretty confident that she's never going to change her mind in a conversation with me. But I wasn't trying to change her. I was trying to make her understand why I don't believe. And we had a 6 to 8 hour blowout conversation one time that wound up being the final time we will probably ever discuss religion and maybe most political issues. And the relationship is now on the, okay, we're going to talk about pedestrian things. And we're only going to do that until we just can't stand it. And we're going to hang out for probably less time than we used to. But my goal isn't to change people. My goal is to get to truth. And you have to go into it recognizing that you could be the one that's wrong, even if the person who disagrees with you is dumber than a fence post and doesn't have a shred of evidence or an argument for it. They could still be correct. And so, well, I appreciate the fact that you want the best for your family members, and the only reason you really want to change somebody is because you think that they're in something that's bad or awful or whatever else. Stop looking at it as I want to change them or find out if they're unchangeable, and start looking at it as I want to help them, and maybe the best way for me to help them is to leave them the fuck alone on this subject and let them engage with other people.
I like that advice.
Yeah, I
think
have to
that's pretty
second that
perfect.
because
Thank you, Matt.
Okay.
I made that rule with myself and my family too, because I don't want to be an evangelical still. I don't want to be responsible for their lack of souls and convincing them of that. I don't want to be on that side, and I definitely don't want them doing that to me. So to me, I had to fully drop any and all responsibility for changing their minds, for being a good example, for all these things. I just have to choose. I either want relationship with them or I don't, but I can't have an agenda with it, or else it's not real. Then I'm still just doing what I was doing back when I was in the faith, which is being responsible for other people's beliefs and using relationship as a proxy to convince people instead of as like just letting it be what it is. And I think that you'll feel a lot more at peace if you're not carrying that as well. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use that passion to go help, in other ways, but it's probably not going to be your family members. Obviously, Matt and I love helping change people's minds, but we are using a different format to do that, and where people get to consent and all of that.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think that's a great question. Thanks for calling in with that. Was there anything else you had for us?
Not that I know of. I might call back a different time for something, but I think that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much, Lex.
You too. Bye.
Hey, you know what that means, Promise?
Bedtime.
That means we finished a show.
Yes.
I'm kind of sad because, like, I know it's late there, and you deserve to get some sleep. I can't wait because we're going to do more shows and stuff in the near future. But
yes, just a couple weeks.
We could go on for another couple hours if we had calls, but we are going to stop here. Even if there are calls, and what I'm going to do is remind people that in less than 2 hours, in 1 hour and 58 minutes, the Sunday show After Dark will be starting. Arden, who's going to be on?
That is a great question that I will totally have the answer to in just a second, and I'm not vamping for.
So none of
That
us
would
did our
be
job.
Forrest and Justin.
Forrest and
Nice.
Justin.
That's going to be great.
That's not even fair. Like, you have the Bible scholar and the biology scholar, and the anti-crazy. That might be the construction of a virtual iron chariot. Like, God himself would have difficulty.
That's great.
So yeah, Jimmy was going to be live, but unfortunately Jimmy's sick. So not six, although he acts six sometimes as well.
Thanks also,
we appreciate
of course, to Arden, but
in.
also to Jess. Yeah, just
Absolutely.
Thanks to Jess, our call
screeners
screener today, and everybody.
I need to stop talking. Promise is in charge. She's supposed to wrap it all up, and I'm just screwing it up. Patreon.com/call the line. Go be good to